important. Their drone capacity is way down. You see it. I mean, it's way down. Their attacks are very minor. They're finished. And yet, the fake news, just like with the election, the fake news is out there saying, wow, Iran is doing just so well. Trump is doing terribly. I watched it yesterday. One of the shows for 5 minutes. Haven't seen the show in a long while. This fake Joe Scarborough talking about how well Iran is doing. I'm saying, where do they come from? It's just the craziest thing. And behind the scenes, I will tell you, they won't even dispute it, although they probably would because it makes sense. They're very good. Iran is very good at publicity, but they're not good at fighting. So I took a look, and I must tell you, they can't believe the press they get. They can't even believe it. And they told me, they said, it's amazing how well we're doing in the papers. We're not doing so well. They're negotiating with us to make a deal.
Well, Mr.
It's hard for them because they are proud. They're very proud.
They've
been the bully of the Middle East for 47 years.
Yeah, they have.
They've been ripping off our presidents and other countries for years. They played Obama for a fool. The JCPOA is one of the worst deals I've ever seen, other than NAFTA, the NAFTA trade deal, which was maybe the worst deal ever made.
Mr. President.
But the JCPOA was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a road to no nuclear weapon. Right. They can't have a nuclear. It says you cannot have a nuclear weapon. We will not have. And I didn't like it. It wasn't strong enough because it said develop. You cannot develop. I said, no, I want buy also. So they fought me on that for a day, and then they agreed to it. You cannot develop or purchase a nuclear weapon. Yeah, so it's true. We got everything, but the press just covers it so crazily. They don't worry about it. No matter what I do, the press will say, it was a great victory for Iran. These people are crazy.
Mr. President.
It's Trump's arrangement.
Yeah, Mr. President, I agree with Brian. Don't worry about it. Our viewers are watching Fox. And so they see this coverage. They're not reading the New York Times. But we know that you destroyed their air defense systems, their radar. Their Navy is at the bottom of the ocean. We know that America is winning this fight. But when they destroy or they shoot down one of our Apache helicopters and we strike Iranian targets and then they fire missiles at our bases in Bahrain and Kuwait and Jordan, we have to fight back. So when you say you don't think America has the appetite to do what we're seeing tonight, I think we do. I think we're ready to see this because, like you said,
part of the problem is that they read the fake news. I mean, because Fox is great. All the anchors on Fox have been fantastic, from Sean to Jesse, Laura. I mean, they've all been great. Everybody, every single anchor has been great. You guys have been amazing. And Trey Yanks is a superstar. I mean, no accurately. And I don't know Trey Yanks, but I mean, he covers it so accurately. It's so beautiful to watch. And he's got a level of excitement. It's been amazing. But the accuracy is so good. I just saw him on your show a little while ago. And I said, this is exactly what's happening. I'm not saying I want the advantage or this. I just say that's what's happening. And that's the way it should be covered. And if it was covered that way, the public would say, wow, what a great situation this is. Because we are stopping a very evil nation which has killed thousands of our people. No legs, no arms, face obliterated. What they've done with, the roadside bomb, Soleimani, who I killed. But Soleimani was a top general. He was a brilliant general, an evil person. But he was a brilliant general. He was a violent general. And he was the father of the roadside bomb. And they sent him off by the thousands. And every time you see a soldier without his legs and arms and beyond, that's Soleimani. So 95% is Soleimani. So I took care of that. And now we have Iran in a very, I guess the ultimate position. They have no choice. The only negative we have is we have everybody writing about it incorrectly. We have fake news.
But my feeling is like your strategy is like an anaconda. You're slowly you'll talk to them, but you're slowly squeezing them to death.
Yeah. I'm talking to them. Hey, I'm sort of like, I'd like to get a deal now, less than 3 or 4 weeks to go, because once you do this, you could just go a step further. But I don't know that America has the appetite to do what I would really much prefer doing. You remember in Iraq, I said, don't go in, but they went in. They made a big mistake. It should have never. That war lasted 10 years. You killed tens of thousands of people. millions of people on both sides, millions of people. Nobody ever reported that. We've lost 13 soldiers in 2 wars. In Venezuela, we lost none to go to the country. And in Iraq, in Iran, we lost 13. In Vietnam, we lost hundreds of thousands, 19 years. Nobody says that. They say, you've been there for 3 months. 3 months. You know, they go crazy because I've been there for 3 months. They've decimated the country.
Are you thinking next?
No, they blame me, Brian. They said, you said you'd be out of there faster. Well, it's a much bigger situation now because we've done a better job than anybody anticipated you could do it. But we were in Vietnam 19 years, but we didn't do the job because we didn't have the right leadership, to be honest. That would have been, if it were me, I would have had that war done in 3 months, 4 months.
But victory here would be total capitulation. And the one thing you brought up yesterday is it's going to be bridge and power plants next. Is that next? Yeah,
but I'd rather not do it because once you do that, the people suffer. Like I heard you mentioning water. Water is really a devastating loss for them. I could do that in 1 minute. They knock out the
What is your message to the Iranian people?
But the problem is the people won't be able to drink water. I mean, you know,
what is your message to the Iranian people, Mr. President? They now have the internet.
Well, my message is to the Iranian people is they're afraid because they have no guns and the other side has guns. And they have a rally and they get shot. They hung the wrestler and his 2 friends. They hung them from the Queen, believe it or not. Violently, is a very top wrestler. And they hung them. They killed at least 40 to 50,000 people. And the people are afraid. You know, when you have a machine gun staring you in the face, or when you have 4 snipers on 4 different buildings shooting people in the head, it's hard to have a rally, okay? It's not a rally that one goes down, another, 2, 3, 4 people laying down alongside of you with a bullet in their brain, and they run. I can't blame them. Who's going to blame them for that?
So can you get them weapons, Mr. President? Can you get them weapons?
Provide aircraft?
Well, we actually sent them weapons, and we were very disappointed by the Kurds, to be honest with you. The Kurds let us down. I disagreed with the decision. You know, I was saying, no, I don't believe they'll deliver. I think they got them for themselves. I think it's a disgrace. But I'll remember that, Kurd. I'll remember that. But they have some guns, but, you know, they don't have the weapons. Look, even if they had some, they're petrified. Because this is different. This isn't like...
You know these guys as the world's best grill cleaning brush. Well, here we have got rescue gloves. The McElroy boys are cooking with Anthony and Scott.
Because this is different. This isn't like in this country. If you shout it, so you have a vicious group of people rioting someplace. If the police shout at them, they end up ruining the policeman. You know, they take away his badge, they take away his life, his pension, his everything. They take away his car.
Mr.
It's
President.
slightly different. Over there, they shoot them, and the rallies dissipate very quickly, as frankly, I think is pretty normal.
Why won't they
Very rarely can that happen. Because there are not many countries. China was one that was able to do it. In Tiananmen Square with the tanks. That tank operator, boom, rolled right over them when they went in front of the tank. There are very few people that can do that to their own people. In other words, the tank operators didn't. With Erdogan in Turkey, they were unable. They tried to pull something on him. He's a friend of mine. He's a very strong leader.
Mr. President,
They were doing it. The tanks could not do it. They could not run over the people.
We only have a minute left, but will there be more bombing tonight?
Yeah, there will be more bombing tonight. It'll be bigger, more powerful. Don't forget, we've knocked out all of their anti-aircraft. They don't have any they have nothing. I mean, they may get lucky with a shoulder weapon or something, but for the most part, you know, they have no defense.
What did the representative say in your phone
They
call?
have finished. Excuse me. They have finished. But the papers, the media refuses to write it. They have finished. We can walk in there tomorrow. We could take soldiers. I don't want to have boots on the ground, but if I wanted to, we could put a small group of soldiers and take over the whole place. They have finished. And the media is crooked. They're just like our elections. The media is crooked.
Mr. President, thanks so much for joining us today. President, everything on your book.
It's amazing. Thank you, Mr. President. It's amazing that.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. Thank you for joining. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you would like to help support the work, please donate on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel or Substack channel. I do all these videos for free, so please help support. Ask your social media to follow me and share the links. You can follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble, TikTok, Substack, X, GETTR, many different ways. You can also listen to the audio podcast or watch the live streams on my website. With that, let's talk about some products that I offer before we continue on with the market. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. It's about 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. And what C60 will do is soak up the free radicals, bring down inflammation. Your cells and tissues will perform better. Your mitochondria will be healthier. You'll have more ATP, and your organ systems will perform better. Now, this will lend itself to having a better immune system and also a better endocrine system. Your brain function will improve because you are reducing inflammation at the neuron level. You're also increasing the energy of the neuron because the mitochondria will be healthier. You'll have more ATP for the neuron and positive neuroplasticity, so you'll be thinking faster and better memory. C60 also helps the basal layer of the skin to improve new skin cells. So over time, you will look younger. In addition, C60 soaks up free radicals at the vascular level to reduce the concentration of oxidized LDL. When you do that, you have less plaque formation. When you have less plaque formation, you have better cardiovascular health, and you have better blood perfusion to your organ systems, including your brain. C60 is very powerful antioxidant. You should be taking this every day. I've been taking this for over 10 years every day, teaspoon a day. So please go to my store, get the MCT, coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. You can take separately or stack it with the C60 resveratrol. Resveratrol will help the basal layer of the skin, help with youthful gene expression for your cells, get rid of cells that are in senescence. Resveratrol also helps to soak up free radicals, boost up the health of the mitochondria. You'll have more energy. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. And again, it stacks really well with C60. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you save $5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60 and the resveratrol. All right, let's go to CNN. U.S. bases face second round of retaliation Iranian attacks. This is CNN.
Experience these irresistible, golden, crispy little yellow Kroger crisps. They are far more addictive than potato chips or spicy tortilla chips. Made from wild-caught Alaskan fish and crafted.
For the second straight night, the U.S. and Iran have traded new strikes, and President Trump is warning that if Iran does not agree to a deal by today, the U.S. will, quote, bomb the expletive out of them. U.S. Central Command now says it completed the second wave of strikes on Iran, hitting surveillance capabilities, communication systems, and air defense sites. Iran calls that a blatant violation of the ceasefire and hit back, targeting U.S. bases in the region. U.S. allies like Bahrain and Kuwait activated their air defenses. Jordan says it intercepted 20 missiles launched by Iran. Iran is also claiming this morning the Strait of Hormuz is now closed to all vessels, quote, until further notice. CENTCOM is disputing that, saying that commercial ships are still moving through, though we know that the strait has been largely paralyzed. Despite all of this, a diplomatic source tells CNN that talks between Washington and Tehran are still on track. Here's what the president said about it in the Oval Office.
We're really close to the deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers.
We have a team in Tehran covering this. Let's start with CNN's Elena Treen live this morning at the White House for us. Where do things stand right now, Elena?
Look, and I think it's clear that we have entered a new phase of this war, and the president really shifting strategy this week and resuming its bombing campaign on Tehran. Now, if you listen to what the president said yesterday, as well as the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, both of them almost arguing that this is a way to negotiate and that the U.S. will negotiate through bombs, if that means that the pressure will force them to finally relent and agree to a deal. I want you to listen to what Hegseth said about all of this.
You can see when someone's trying to tap, tap, tap on a deal, instead they're going to have tap, tap, tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America. If we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs. And we're very good at it.
This is quite different, Kate, from what we have been hearing, I remind you, from top Trump officials and the president himself for weeks now throughout this ceasefire, continuing pressing pause to try and allow these diplomatic talks to breathe. Now they are essentially trying to use these bombs as leverage. Now, if you listen to what the president said yesterday, I remind you that earlier in the day, he had posted that Iran had, quote, taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will pay the price. He had previewed in the Oval Office that they were going to be issuing more strikes on Tehran. I think this is notable. We saw him do it the day before as well. This idea that he is warning Iran that strikes are coming. I think that continues to add to this idea that he is trying to pressure them and force them to the table. Now, what was also interesting is the president kind of echoed this sentiment when he spoke with Fox News yesterday. Fox News reporter said that he actually called him from the Situation Room. Just remarkable in and of itself. But then he went on to say that the Iranians had called him and asked him to stop the bombing, but that they would continue unless Iran agreed to a deal. So this is where we are right now. I will say, from the conversations I've had, they still want a deal. The ultimate goal here is still diplomacy, but the president has clearly gotten impatient and is now trying to use these strikes as a way to force this deal sooner rather than later, Kate.
Yeah, and count this as another day of stretching the bounds and definition of a ceasefire over there right now. Elena, thanks so much. Let's see what happens, because it sure seems like a lot is happening as we speak.
Yeah, and we're getting a look at actually what this is looking like on the ground in Iran as those negotiations, not negotiations, continue, that dynamic moves forward. We want to go straight to Tehran, where CNN's Fred Plotkin is standing by live. We should note, CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but does maintain full editorial control of its reports. Fred, what is the latest there on the ground?
Hi there, Omar. First of all, the Iranians are completely denying that they called President Trump last night and demanded an end to these strikes. To several Iranian news agencies and official channels also saying that simply is not true. And as far as negotiating through bombing is concerned, that's also something where Iranian officials are saying that bombing is going to achieve exactly the opposite of what the president wants it to achieve. I actually spoke to a senior Iranian official just a couple of hours ago, and he told me that from the Iranian perspective, they believe that the Trump administration needs to respect the resilience of the Iranians, also needs to respect the military capability of the Iranians as well, specifically looking at the Strait of Hormuz. And I asked that official whether or not there was a chance that the two countries would go back to war. And he said it all depends on the Trump administration right now. If they want to make a deal, if they stop firing, then there can be a deal. However, if they continue to bomb Iran, then a full-on war and return to full-on war is certainly something that is fairly possible. So right now, certainly these negotiations still in a very difficult state. Iranians, from their perspective, have said that this was a serious breach of the ceasefire of what happened last night and the night before. At the same time, both sides are still saying that they want to move towards that memorandum of understanding, which we have to say is just the next step in these negotiations that would end the hostilities between the two countries and then lead to a period of larger negotiations for a possible full peace agreement. But again, right now, especially after what happened last night, it seems a little bit more difficult, but certainly from what was also going on here overnight, we certainly had a busy night here in Tehran. It certainly seems that diplomatic process is still on. One of the things that happened was that during these overnight hours, even as the bombing was going on, Omar, There was a team of Qatari negotiators here on the ground in Tehran trying to move that process forward. Those negotiators have now left. We'll wait to see whether or not much progress was made on that. Certainly, again, the Iranians are saying they're up for a deal. At the same time, if the U.S. keeps pressing and especially dropping bombs, it will have exactly the opposite effect, Omar.
Fred Blyken on the ground for us in Tehran. Thank you for the reporting.
Joining me now, former Defense Intelligence official Major Harrison Mann. It's good to have you with us this morning. So we heard from Secretary Hegseth there saying, we will continue to negotiate with bombs. Is that actually the way to get Iran to the table? It does not seem to be working in this moment.
Hi, Erica. We know for certain from recent history that it is not the way to get Iran to negotiate. They tried bombing Iran for 40 days. It didn't work. Then they tried the blockade for another 2 months. That hasn't worked, and they're out of ideas, so I guess they're trying to bomb a second time. It's unfortunate because I think there is still a possibility for peace when the Trump administration gets serious about actually negotiating, which is going to require making some concessions. But for now, they're clearly not willing to do that, and so they're going to start bombing again. The other really worrying escalation we saw yesterday was an apparent war crime, a U.S. targeted precision strike on a water reservoir for drinking water in Iran, near Hormuz. And that's something Trump has threatened several times over the past 8 weeks, when he got frustrated with the ceasefire. And I'm hoping we don't see more war crimes targeting civilian infrastructure as a deliberate strategy to try and bring Iran to the table.
Certainly there are a lot of questions about that, and questions in dissent come for more clarity, right, on what the exact targets were in terms of that and whether that water plant was one of them. As we look at where things stand this morning, to your point about getting serious about the negotiations, we have heard so much from President Trump publicly. And CNN did an excellent analysis by our colleague Aaron Blake earlier this week about the number of times that President Trump has said we're close to a deal. We've heard it in the last several days. There is so much public posturing from this president. Are you concerned at all that that could weaken the U.S. position?
I think it already has weakened the U.S. position. What the Iranian side understood at the start of the war, which let's remember began when Trump and Netanyahu bombed in the middle of negotiations, is that it's very hard to trust Donald Trump and Trump's constant lying, both in public and maybe to the Iranian side, has only further undermined that trust. So when it looks like maybe they're making progress towards a deal and then Trump comes out and leaks some of the details, or he just starts making really outrageous threats, that's going to make it even harder for him to earn the trust of his negotiating counterpart and get them to actually agree to something. And I think that's why we're seeing a increased willingness.
Wait a minute. And the Iranians have been negotiating with good faith? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, what team are they on? Are they on Team Iran or are they on Team America? Now, this is CNN that's going over this right now. But the Iranians have not been forthright in the negotiations for a proper ceasefire and a de-escalation of the war. Now, has Trump been lying to the American public of how successful negotiations have been going on? No, he hasn't been truthful. But the Iranians are honest brokers? Get real. The Iranians should not have a nuclear weapon. Now, I personally believe that Trump hasn't gone far enough. We should have had troops on the ground procuring the nuclear material and creating a security zone, maybe 25 kilometers inland around the Strait of Hormuz to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is controlled by the United States. And taking the oil and taking the natural gas from the Iranians, I think is our God-given right, because that's the spoils of war. Now, you have these people on CNN saying, well, Trump can't knock out a water facility or a energy facility because that might be a war crime. If you cut off their transit system, if you destroy their bridges, that's a war crime. Wait a minute here. What about the war crime of the IRGC decimating the people that were protesting? What about that? No. See, they're on Team Iran. They're not on Team America. Now, I personally believe that Trump has failed in Iran. He's kicked the can down the road too much because he thought he would be able to negotiate a peace. The IRGC, the theocratic regime, the Shia religion in general, they don't understand anything but death. And you try to negotiate with people like that, it'll only end in absolute destruction. You can't negotiate. So Trump has failed. I'm not saying that he's been successful with this, but he's been failing because he has too much hubris on his abilities to negotiate. He's been lying to the American public about those negotiations, and he's been too afraid to actually fully go General Grant on Iran. Now, how did General Grant win the Civil War? He chokehold the Confederacy in General Lee in Petersburg. And he just slowly starved them. And then he went in. And that's what we should have done. No, that's a war crime. That's a war crime. No, we need to have the mentality that it's unconditional surrender with the Iranians. And it will allow for a constitutional republic to be born. But Trump is a little weak on that because it's Taco. Taco always chickens out. Trump, he always chickens out. But CNN, the problem with CNN is they're not on Team America. You can't beat General Grant because it's a war crime. With their mentality, we would have never won the Civil War. And if we didn't win the Civil War, then we wouldn't have been the strong nation to be able to fight the Nazis during World War II. We wouldn't have been the strong nation to be able to win the Cold War. Most of the world would be communist with their logic applied to General Grant during the Civil War. So maybe we should stop listening to people like this that are saying, you can't destroy a bridge because that's a war crime, and start putting on start channeling General Grant and win. Win. That's all that matters is winning. Stupid. And you think I'm wrong? Well, guess what? History proves me right.
To go back to full-scale war, because they don't really think at this point that there's any other way to convince Trump to negotiate in good faith.
When this war began,
Trump's fault?
Israel, when this war began, when it comes to Israel,
47 years.
47
years. 47 years that Iran has been playing this game, waiting and trying to build up their military apparatus. It is time to destroy them.
Put out this statement yesterday, this message I should take to people. I want to play that for you.
I have a message for you.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea.
I have a message for you, the people of Lebanon. Israel is not at war with you. We're at war with Hezbollah, that has taken your country hostage, that does Iran's bidding, that uses your territory to launch terrorist attacks against Israel. Do you remember what Lebanon was like before Iran and Hezbollah turned it into a nightmare? Once Hezbollah is dismantled, the possibilities are endless, and they are sky high.
That's notable, of course, coming on the heels of Iran and Israel trading strikes earlier in the week, specifically on Sunday. On Sunday, too, in the wake of Iran's missiles President Trump told the Financial Times in an interview that Israel is going to have to accept whatever deal the U.S. makes with Iran and that Israel doesn't call the shots. Based on what we're seeing, how much sway, how much influence do you think this president actually has when it comes to Prime Minister Netanyahu and the decisions that Israel is making?
So a reminder that President Trump and any U.S. president has nearly infinite leverage over the Israeli government. Essentially, their Air Force can't fly without our support. You know, it's not just bombs and aircraft and supply parts. You know, we have U.S. troops on Israeli soil defending the skies of Israel so those planes can safely land. We supply the fuel that goes into those aircraft. So if Trump wanted to use it, I'm pretty confident that he could end any Israeli military aggression that he wanted to. And we can see that he wants to do that a little bit, but clearly not enough, that it's deterred Netanyahu from launching what potentially started this escalation, which was an Israeli strike on Beirut on Sunday. So Trump is still kind of trying to end the war with half measures, and it's clear that that's not going to work. He's going to have to do some difficult things, including actually putting his foot down with Netanyahu, as well as possibly making some concessions to the Iranian government. And unfortunately, I don't think he feels the urgency to do either of those things because they could both be politically costly. And he's not going to feel that urgency until maybe we've seen another round of full-scale war that's totally unnecessary.
Now, my take on Netanyahu in Israel, I think they have overplayed their hand with the kindness of the American taxpayer. Netanyahu needs to go. They need to have elections, maybe even prosecute him for improprieties. I don't know. I don't really care about their politics. But as an American taxpayer, I am tired of funding Israel. Israel needs to deal with their own problems. The United States shouldn't be constantly helping them out. What upsets me the most is that if Hezbollah and Hamas are existential threats to the livelihood of the Israelis and of Israel as a country, if they're in an existential threat, then all of the citizens, secular and religious, should be in the military fighting for their country. But that's not what's happening. So either it's not an existential threat, or if it is an existential threat, a lot of the citizens within the country aren't willing to fight for it. So if they have citizens that aren't willing to fight for their own country, if they're in an existential threat, why is it that the American taxpayer is paying for this? Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm an America First expansionist, not an America First pacifist. There's two types of America First. Most of the people, when they say they're America First, they don't want to go into a war. They don't want. They just only want to deal with domestic policy. Well, guess what? You got to wake up. It's the jungle out there. You better be king of the jungle, or someone else will be king of the jungle. That's just mankind. And being an America First pacifist will lead to an erosion of our hegemonic power. With that said, Israel needs to deal with their own problem, and the United States needs to stop helping. Now, in terms of Iran, the United States needs to put ground forces in and take control of the Strait and take control of their oil and gas. Now, I believe UAE is trying to negotiate, I believe it's the UAE, it might be Qatar, but I think it's the UAE, is trying to negotiate with Iran since Trump started these warning shots that he's going to escalate the war. Because the Iranians know that they can't win. In the end, the United States will win if we are willing to put ground troops in and start destroying. Now, the question is Trump willing to do it? I don't know. He chickens out all the time. Taco. But if he does what he's saying he wants to do, then it's going to change the whole dynamic in terms of the hegemonic power of the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is going to lose. UAE is going to lose. Bahrain is going to lose. Qatar is going to lose. Oman is going to lose. Iraq Kuwait, Iran. It's going to change the whole landscape if we're controlling the oil and gas and the Strait of Hormuz. And it's a good geopolitical play for the United States to check China, because we'll be able to chokehold them if they move into Taiwan. So by doing this, if Trump does what he says he wants to do, would actually be better for us against China. But he won't, because he's a chicken. And we'll kick the can down the road, and we're going to have to deal with this problem some other day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. They're very similar, but there's one key difference: musculature. All right, heirloom barley will soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, bring down inflammation, and detoxify your body. Super important. Slow down the aging process, boost up that immune system, improve your endocrine system. You recover quicker after a workout. Your brain function will improve because you're reducing inflammation. Your joint health will improve because you're reducing inflammation. You're reducing inflammation at the vascular level, so you're reducing plaque formation. So taking the heirloom barley and the micronutrients in this barley that you can't get in any other store is super important. Now, Gladiator barley, you get all the benefits that you have in heirloom barley, but one added benefit: it helps to build muscle. So if you're older, building muscle is super important. It's going to improve your skeletal system, your musculature, your posture, and also protect your brain. Why? By building muscle, you're producing more myokines. And myokines are neuroprotective. It'll also increase BDNF, which is super important to protect neurons. Studies have shown that if you have more muscle mass when you're older, your brain function is better. Now, you can pay attention to me or not pay attention to me. I don't really care. But the ones that do pay attention to me, you are going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the Gladiator barley, do some resistance training. You'll also be able to control your A1C levels, aka diabetes. All right? So get the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley. Now you can take them separately or stack it with the Boomer Boost. The best stack is the Gladiator with the Boomer Boost, and do some resistance training. But you can take them separately. Boomer Boost is a great supplement to get all the multivitamins you need, but you get a lot more that will boost up your immune system, improve your endocrine system, help with brain function, help with musculature, rev up your metabolism. You'll have a steady burn of energy, slow down the aging process. They'll soak up free radicals. You get a lot of benefit from this. This is your multivitamin, but you get a lot more. A lot more. And for ones that have been suffering from migraines, you will probably notice that your migraines have diminished by taking this. That's what I've noticed. I've suffered from migraine headaches all my life until I started taking Boomer Boost. And guess what? They diminished. So take Boomer Boost, slow down the aging process. And you can stack it with Gladiator barley or with heirloom barley. But you can take them separately. But you do get this synergistic benefit. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get healthy. Pay attention. This is a very powerful supplement that will help to slow down the aging process, and you'll get all the multivitamins that you need. And if you want to stack on top with the other vitamins that I have at higher concentrations to focus and target on certain systems, you can do that. It's very customizable, this protocol that I have, with all these different supplements that I have on my store. But if you follow my advice, you're going to slow down the aging process. And it's really simple. The protocol, probiotic is a foundation. The first pillar on that foundation, max 35 or cleanse. Improve the innate immune system. C60, soak up those free radicals and boost up those energy levels. Turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, the third pillar. Boost up your immune system and your endocrine system and help with your cardiovascular health. And boomer boost. Steady burn of energy, revs up the metabolism, and you get all those other benefits that I just mentioned. You do that every day, you're going to radically slow down the aging process. And then you couple it with some holistic methods like proper exercise, be about 60% resistant, 40% cardio. Don't do too much cardio, it's bad for you. All right, you want to do more resistance training. In terms of anti-aging, more resistance training is better, but you don't want to do only 100% resistance training. You need to do a little bit of cardio. So 60-40 split is good. Make sure you do stretching and balancing exercise to activate that cerebellum. When you do that regularly, you're stressing the body in a way positively to slow down the aging process. You're creating a microenvironment that allows for healing and growth in that microenvironment. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take my advice. All right. We're going to listen to General Keane here about Iran crumbling. Before we do that, the markets are open. It's 10:47 a.m. New York time. The S&P 500 is at 7,298, so it has been going down from the all-time high. VIX is elevated at 21. If you've been paying attention to me, I said 3 weeks ago that either the end of May or the beginning of June, we're going to see a spike. Well, we're seeing the spike right now. The question is, will it continue to elevate because of the war? It might spike up to maybe 23 before it goes down. Currency is stable. Euro's at 115, Japanese yen's at 160.51. Oil is trading at 90.23 for WTI future. That's above that support level of 88. So the trading range right now, because of what's going on in the news, is probably going to be in between 88 to about 94. If positive things happen and there's a flow, more flow through the strait, we will see WTI break that support level of 88 and start trading in a lower range, probably around 82 to 86 or 87. But we'll wait and see if it does break and is sustained before we adjust that trading range. Right now, that trading range is at 88 to 94. Okay. Natural gas is trading at 3.087. Probably fair values at around 2.9. So it might break the 3 mark and go to 2.9. But I think the trading range is around 2.9 to about 3.3, 3.2 for natural gas futures. Again, please go to my store, help support the work that I do by getting the great products that I offer.
This brilliant little device keeps any room ice cold all summer and toasty warm all winter, with zero installation, zero ductwork, and zero contractor fees. It mounts on any...
Won't they stall the implementation of that? And won't they cheat dealing with the implementation of that? And you're nodding yes. Yes, they will. Because we know it. We expect it. Yeah. So I still think the preferred option here is to recognize who we're really dealing with here. And we're never going to make the perfect deal with these guys because they're not going to implement it. Let's get on with the 10 to 14 days that we need to finish them.
Now think about this. This is Fox Business. And the clip that we played previously was CNN. CNN positioned themselves that Trump is lying and he's the bad actor. and that he's not negotiating in good faith. Yet Fox is saying Iran is the bad actor, and they're not negotiating in good faith. So what is it? What is it? Now, I do believe that Trump has been lying to the American public about what's been going on with true negotiations. What's realistic? I think he has too much hubris, and Trump believes in his abilities that he just doesn't have. But you really think Iran is a honest broker? You think they're really negotiating in good faith? No, they're trying to run the clock out. So General Keene's probably more right than anyone that CNN is interviewing.
The president is focusing on what would cause economic collapse of the regime. Cog Island.
Yeah. He says, actually, he told Fox and Friends this morning, he said his preference has always been to take Cog Island, but he doesn't know if America has the stomach for it. What does that mean?
Well, he has two choices. You can destroy that distribution point. Right now, for our audience to understand, the blockade is shutting Cog Island down. That's their major distribution point. So big blockade, no tankers can go in there and get anything because we stopped them from getting through the straits. So the president's choice is, does he destroy that infrastructure or does he take control of it? He would like to take control of it. And what he's thinking is the model that we have in Venezuela. We have taken control of Venezuelan oil. And how it's distributed and who gets it and who doesn't get it, the United States is making that decision in conjunction with the government. Here, I think the United States and the people would have no problem with it whatsoever, because it's only going to be temporary. It will force the collapse of this regime, and we'll have someone else to deal with like we have in Venezuela.
Will it force the collapse of the regime?
In time, yes.
If we control that oil, just control it. It's ours.
They have no income whatsoever then at that point. And listen, I'm talking about full-out military operations that go after, take away all the rest of their offensive weapons capability. You can't get every one of them, get most of it all. And also go after all the organization that's sustaining the regime. Make that very, very weak. Make them vulnerable to the collapse of the regime. So militarily and economically, both things combined, we can force that collapse eventually in time. Yes.
Do you think decapitating the Revolutionary Guards, killing them in their bunkers, do you think that's in the cards?
We will do everything we can to, if we go back to major combat operations, to take the leadership down, just as we remember, we began the war doing that in conjunction with the Israelis. We've been sitting here for 2 months doing what on our side? Gathering intelligence. We know a lot about what they've been doing for these 2 months. We know where they moved their ballistic missiles and their launchers to and other things. And obviously we know what their leaders are doing. What have their leaders done? They've done the same thing that they did with their missiles. They've dug deeper to get beyond our capability of our bombs. But yes, we can. It's not just the leaders, it's the infrastructure, the organization that sustained them. When you start fracturing them and taking them apart, they don't trust each other. You know, the regime appears strong from the outside until it's not. And these things usually happen quickly.
Yep.
But when you're looking at it,
it's going to be a phase transition. What he calls about quickly, it's a phase transition. Very similar to ice. You ever watch ice melt? There's, slowly, and then all of a sudden it radically changes. Or reverse, watching water freeze. It gets, there's a little bit of, and then all of a sudden it snaps into a frozen state. Or boiling of water. It's not boiling, and then all of a sudden it starts boiling away. It's a phase transition. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium, dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin. It cross-links with the collagen when you drink filtered water to help the dermal layer. Vitamin C and magnesium will boost up your immune system, and vitamin C and magnesium will help your brain. You should stack this with the magnesium and zinc that I have on my store to improve brain function and the immune system. Not enough people are taking magnesium, and it's super important, especially after the crisis that we went through in 2020. Early onset of dementia is going to happen. in your circle of friends or family members, it's going to happen. All right? You better start preparing for it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics. You can get it in veggie cap form or in powdered form. I prefer taking the powdered form because I take all these different powders like the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley and the collagen and the lignans, right? So it's easier for me to take in the lunch. But you can take the veggie cap version. Either one will help you. Now, by taking a probiotic every day, you're improving your gut biome. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better. You're going to have less inflammation. You're going to reduce leaky gut syndrome, reduce the chances of getting food allergies. You're going to be boosting up your immune system. You're going to have higher concentrations of IgA. Your mucosal lining will be thicker. You're going to be able to sleep better because with a better gut biome, that digestion and the compounds that are being created in your gut are going to actually help you to sleep. You'll get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep. That will help to detoxify your central nervous system and consolidate memory. Good sleep regularly will help with your memory. And good sleep will slow down the aging process. People that are chronically sleep deprived increase the chances of early onset of dementia. In addition, by having a good gut biome, you're going to have a better metabolism. So you're going to be able to control your weight better. You're going to be able to have a more steady flow of energy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the veggie cap version or the powder version. And the added benefit of taking a good probiotic, it also helps with skin health. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's take a look at some of the other news that is happening. They're still playing around with the Epstein files. So let's listen in to CNN 30 minutes ago, because the Epstein files are so important.
We're looking for people 40 plus who want to actually master Claude in 28 days. No free time needed, just 10 minutes.
There's also a new report out today, an extensive report that's in the New York Times, and it's based on Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's upcoming new book that's about to be published called Regime Change. And they write in this new report today about how the release of the Epstein files, debating over how to handle Jeffrey Epstein, basically paralyzed the White House. And there were meetings in the Situation Room even where obviously, of the utmost national security concern, meetings pertaining to that happened. When you read that and you hear that the president's team, the vice president, the chief of staff, everyone's meeting inside the sit room about Jeffrey Epstein, what does it tell you about how they viewed that story?
Well, unfortunately, that's not new news to me. Unfortunately, that was something that I lived through. I watched the Speaker of the House shut down the government and keep the House completely out of session for 8 weeks in the fall of 2025, simply because he was under orders of the president and his team not to do anything in the House of Representatives because they were doing everything they could do to stop that resolution from passing the House. The same resolution that I signed the discharge petition to force to a vote on the floor. I'm not surprised by this news, Caitlin, because I also had a very uncomfortable phone call with the president before the release of the Epstein files, where he told me that his friends would get hurt if the files were released, and I'll never forget that. I'll also never forget the text message he sent me when I told him that my son's life was being threatened because he was calling me a traitor because I fought to release the Epstein files, where he told me that I deserved it. And so this doesn't shock me that his team was paralyzed, but I tell you what it is, it's absolutely ridiculous and unforgivable. We're talking about pedophiles and rapists of the elite class of people that never get held accountable for anything. So if they were paralyzed and scared and didn't know what to do about releasing the Epstein files, these people are absolutely absurd. They don't deserve the American people's trust. As a matter of fact, we should consider them as, they should be considered traitors. They're traitors. The ones that refuse to release Epstein files want to cover up for pedophiles and rapists and all sorts of disgusting things in these files. Those are the traitors to the American people, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
This report basically says it was the president who didn't want anything released. Are you saying that applies to the president himself?
I'm saying exactly that. He told me on the phone that his friends would get hurt, and that's why he's against releasing the Epstein files. And I think we've seen a lot of that dribble out. So yeah, it all matches. It completely adds up from the phone call that I had with the president to the.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't really care. All right, let's listen into KKR's launch of AI infrastructure. Now, I did participate as just listening in to a lecture from Blackstone. They are heavily investing in hyperscaler land, all right? They're buying land, building a warehouse, leasing the warehouse, and hooking up utilities to it, leasing the warehouse to these hyperscalers. So they put the chips in and their servers, and they're going to run the AI. So there's a lot of money being invested by Blackstone in this. Now, it's more of a real estate play and a property play than actually investing directly in the hyperscalers. But it's interesting to see on how Blackstone or a KKR is investing in the infrastructure of AI. So this is the reason why it's important to pay attention to this.
Repowering means to replace old and outdated tech with newer technology. Projects like these could help Germany realize its vision of a renewable energy future.
Connectivity needed to start. KKR, along with NVIDIA, Vistra, and the Kuwait Investment Authority, they're launching a new company. They're calling it Helix Digital Infrastructure, a one-stop shop for building out AI infrastructure needs. And joining us now to discuss
this is KKR's version of what Blackstone is.
Along with Waldemar Slezak, KKR's global head of digital infrastructure. Guys, thanks for bearing with me here. I know I'm in San Francisco. You're there on the floor. Adam, let me start with you. What problem is it that you are trying to solve here with Helix?
Well, it's so great to be here with all of you guys. Thank you so much. I could not be more excited. AI and the cloud are driving the infrastructure build-out of a generation. We're talking the railroads, the U.S. highway system, the internet itself. The problem is the scale and the pace of that build-out has created a fundamental industry bottleneck at the layer of the physical infrastructure. We're talking the data centers, the power, the connectivity needed to enable all of that innovation. So we formed Helix to smash that bottleneck and to enable all of the benefits of AI to come more quickly for governments, for enterprises, for startups, for citizens worldwide. And Helix is different because it is going to coordinate all of those difficult pieces of infrastructure. It's going to be run by, as a company, by a group of seasoned operators, and it's backed by scaled and truly reliable capital, which is really important in this environment where there's a lot of announcements which don't always deliver.
Now, the one thing I just want to go in, there's nobody like you, Adam. I don't mean to slight everybody else that's involved, but I do want to know why you're bringing in NVIDIA, why do you need Vistra, why do you need the Kuwait Investment Authority? Because that seems like a disparate group, a kind of a disparate coalition, so to speak.
Well, these partnerships are really important, and I talk about coordinating and integrating all of this. And power, is part of the fundamental bottleneck today. And to have Bitchute as one of the leading power producers in the U.S., about 50 gigawatts of capacity, being able to partner with them tightly, both on existing power as well as new sources of power, is incredibly important. NVIDIA, and I've had the privilege of working with NVIDIA for many, many years, and that operational partnership of being able to coordinate technical roadmaps, of their being able to help us understand how to build more quickly, how to build more efficiently, our being able to help them with their roadmaps, I hope, as well. These are really going to be tight operational partnerships that I think are going to set us apart.
Let me follow up with you as well, Voldemort, in terms of on the financial side of this. $10 billion initially, but I think is an evergreen fund, and I am curious about that. Potentially you're going to have quarterly raises in perpetuity rather than sort of one traditional fixed life vehicle. Why make that decision? Why is that important to the overall structure of the company?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I mean, thanks for having us. I think it is really important to have the right depth and patience of capital. And so when we think about the scale of the opportunity at GETTR, certainly this is a multi-decade, multi-trillion dollar, I think global reshaping of the global economy as we see it. And so we really wanted to make the point that Adam alluded to, which is really bringing the operational capability that Adam and the team will bring, our strategic partners, and then marrying that with really long-dated patient capital at scale. I think that is a true differentiation. Being a permanent owner of assets, owner, acquirer, and operator of assets across the whole ecosystem is really important. And I think we all see the scale of the build-out. It's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, and you talked about some of the capex numbers. And I think it's going to require a whole village to really help build this out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as though GETTR doesn't have a significant amount of money already invested in infrastructure or, in digital and power. I'm just curious as to why you thought it was best to sort of form a separate company rather than just deploy that capital for your existing structure.
You are absolutely right. We have been one of the leading infrastructure investors for almost 20 years, really based on three sort of core principles: thematic, patient, and discipline. Our digital infrastructure franchise in power is we've invested over $70 billion of equity. We're one of the largest owners of data centers in the world. And we still see a tremendous opportunity. And we think that, evolution is important in this ecosystem. So, there's a saying that if you don't like evolution, you like obsolescence even less. And I think that's what we're trying to pursue here. And being able to partner with Adam, as Jim mentioned, an incredible, capable operator who helped scale AWS into one of the leading cloud operators is a different way of looking at this problem and attacking it from an operator perspective, marrying with capital.
I actually love the way you're doing it because I felt that it does take a bit of a coalition. These are very hard to do, Homer. Do you envision yourself as kind of like a data center light model, like we see from Blackstone, where they've got terrific people, but they're not the guys who are getting their hands dirty, they're the guys who are actually running the operation? Would that be it?
I think I can show you the calluses from actually getting our hands dirty. We have a lot of capability in this. We've been doing this before AI, and I think we'll do it. After the evolution of AI, AI will eventually be called just computing. And so I think we really want to get our hands dirty. I think we will be building, operating, designing this. You mentioned earlier, seeing how many of these data centers are being built on budget. I think we have the track record to show you that we can actually do this.
I like that. David?
Yeah, Adam, I mean, but it's not like Microsoft or Alphabet or Oracle. I don't know. Do they need help? I mean, it's not. I'm just curious. Can you take me through here how you're actually going to make money and who the clients ultimately are of this business?
The clients are the hyperscalers, so exactly those types of companies you just mentioned. And I think there's a misnomer that they've got all these capabilities, they've been doing this for a long time, and so these projects just come together, and the power's there, and the connectivity's there, and the data center's there, and somebody brings them a neat project, or they just do it all in-house themselves, and they move on to the next one. I'm here to tell you that is not true, and I know that from the inside of building over $100 billion per year business, which relies fundamentally on this infrastructure. There's all the old jokes about two folks and a pickup truck in Texas, and they've got a great deal, but they golf with the governor's brother-in-law, so don't worry about the permits. And these are real stories. This actually happens. It is hard
and it has become even harder with AI and the pace of the build-outs and the scale of the build-outs. And they absolutely have a lot of capabilities to do a lot of these things in-house, and they absolutely need reliable partners who can bring them in scaled projects that are going to deliver. Over 25% of data center projects which are announced now are not actually delivering, and that number seems to be increasing. There's no reliability in this. And that's why working with KKR, it has the platform behind this, and with the seasoned team of operators that I'm in the middle of hiring, we can actually deliver for hyperscalers.
All right, what is the number one gating issue right now? You hear its power. Obviously, notable that Vistra is one of the partners here. Is that a fair assumption?
I think there are a couple of things. I think power is absolutely at the center of the current bottleneck. And as you said, that's exactly why we're so delighted to be partnering with Vistra, who really is one of the leading and largest and most scaled operators. I think other bottlenecks will emerge over time, though. This is one of those fast motion movies unfolding in real time. And I think you may see it in different parts of the connectivity, the power, the data center, the building, the operating. And Helix is really going to have a model of, we will work backwards from our customers. We will understand what hyperscalers need, and we will go build or acquire or partner or enter any capabilities they need so that we're the very best partner and the very best counterparty that they have on planet Earth.
All right. Well, there are going to be lots of ways to invest in AI infrastructure. You can invest directly into the hyperscalers like Oracle. You can invest in SpaceX with this grandiose idea of putting AI cloud in orbit by Elon Musk. You can invest in KKR or some sort of fund that's tied into AI infrastructure, or Blackstone. There's many ways to play it. But be careful. Be careful. All right? We may be building out too fast, too much. Just like what happened with the railroad industry. And what happened with the railroad build-out was the trusts. And they weren't backed by anything. And trusts blew up. It was kind of like, at that time, a financial engineering product. And it blew up. And because of that, railroads couldn't get the funding, and the industry went into a recession. And it hurt the whole economy. Something similar might happen here. Because you're starting to hear lots of different ways to invest in it. There's circular financing that's taking place in the community of AI, with NVIDIA and OpenAI and all this Oracle. There's the circular financing. So there's financial engineering there. There's financial engineering with creating ETFs that are tied into certain aspects of the AI build-out. You have private equity and private credit ETFs that are available that don't have liquidity. So what happens when the trusts of modern day, the financial engineering of modern day, fail? What happens to the AI infrastructure? And this is the reason why I think that what's happening in AI is very similar to the railroad industry. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. This will help to control your cortisol levels and help to control your blood glucose levels. That will help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. Turmeric and ashwagandha soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. Great for joint health, recovering after a workout, bringing down inflammation systemically, including your brain. Lignans helps to improve your immune system and endocrine system, brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. Now, when you stack these together, you can take them separately and they work great. But you stack them together, that's where the anti-aging magic happens. All right? There's synergistic benefits of doing this. So pay attention. By taking the ashwagandha root, you're boosting up the immune system and helping your cardiovascular system. Turmeric, you're bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals. So you're boosting up the immune system, helping the cardiovascular system, helping brain function. Lignans, helping the immune system, the endocrine system, soaking up those free radicals. When you're soaking up those free radicals, you're also boosting up your energy levels. So you're boosting up energy levels, you're bringing down inflammation, and you're boosting up your immune system. And when you do that, you're slowing down the aging process. Because think about it. When you look at people that are in their geriatric years and are aging, they have less energy. Their immune system isn't as robust. They have cognitive problems. They have cardiovascular problems. So when you target all these things that geriatrics have, you're actually slowing down the aging process and improving your longevity. So please go to my store, take my advice, get the lignans, the turmeric, the ashwagandha, stack them together. It's synergistic. Now, you will benefit by taking them individually, but please pay attention. Stack them together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, and you get $5 off. All right, let's listen to Al Jazeera. It sounds like maybe something just happened in terms of...
There is significant tension between the two countries. Iran has never closed the door of diplomacy.
They never fully opened it either.
Neighbors, even at the height of tensions, Iran has kept a level of negotiations and diplomacy with the United Arab Emirates. So there's no reason to...
But they always string people along. Because the more they run out the clock, the more they get closer to a nuclear weapon, the more they can consolidate power because they've been fractured when Israel killed their leaders.
And Iran is focused on the next step as the Americans are escalating tensions. Look at what Trump is saying. He is committing war crimes every day, and he's threatening to expand his war crimes against Iran, threatening to take Harangue Island, and that shows how completely he is outside the bounds of international law. He speaks and behaves like an international gangster, but Iran has prepared itself for the worst scenario, and the problem Trump is facing is that he does not possess escalation dominance. Iran has potent instruments in its hands to...
Contract data is buried in inboxes, shared drives, disconnected systems. That's where Agilent comes in. Agilent transforms contract data into business intelligence.
Infrastructure. Okay, so obviously you were saying before that the Strait of Hormuz is the biggest issue that both sides face right at this point in time. Trump saying that he's going to hit Iran tonight, may even contemplate taking Harangue Island, as we heard there, taking over the oil infrastructure, much like he claims to have done in Venezuela. How difficult is that going to be for him? What's your response to that? Is that just a bluff, a threat at this point in time, do you think?
And I think he can attack it, he can destroy it, he can stop the production of oil and the export of oil. But for him to take it over, he needs to have soldiers on the ground. And we don't know what the Iranians have prepared for that. I mean, they would be foolish if they haven't prepared by now for that particular scenario. And I think they have proven so far is that they're not stupid. They are strategic and they calculate very well. The real issue is what will happen to the Gulf states. Iran still retaliates every time by bombing the Gulf states. Although they say they're going for American targets, those spaces have long been empty and have been damaged by them as well. Why are they not going directly to the American forces? And they're not doing so because they don't seek escalation. This incident with the Apache helicopter was clearly an accident. This is what we fear most, is accidental contact between the two that could lead to major escalation.
Which fuels major escalation.
It's clear that they are avoiding each other. The Americans also, they hit back. They didn't go for any significant target in this last campaign. They're just there to illustrate the point, to show the Iranians that we have the power, we're still here. As long as these two are balancing their power against each other, it is unfortunately the regional countries who are going to lose. And of course, because of the closure of the strait, the Gulf states are set to lose most.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Sultan Barakat, as well as Ali Akbar Darini for us in Tehran. Lebanon's president insists that diplomacy is the only solution.
Let's just go over the markets here really quick. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,298. It's off of its all-time high of 7,600 or so. It's time to buy. All right? If you've been waiting, buy into a broad-based index like SPY or, some ETF that's tied to the Russell 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever, right? But start nibbling into the market, okay? Why? Because I have a target of 7,800 for the S&P 500, maybe even 8,000 by year end. So this is a perfect opportunity to get that yield. So don't bet against America, all right? Never bet against America. This is something that JP Morgan has said back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Never bet against the United States, ever. All right? So just take that as a axiom. Oil is trading at 90.32, so it's still above that support level of 88. So I believe it's going to trade in this 88 to about 94 range as we continue on with some of these military operations. If Iran is successful in knocking out infrastructure in some of the GCC countries, like Saudi Arabia or UAE, most likely we'll start trading above 94. The question is, will the security bubble be able to knock down any sort of offensive strike by Iran? We have to wait and see. So pay attention to that. Let's listen into MS Now. This is Morton Joe talking about Trump.
You, just you, building your app on base 44. Describe it.
Mika, like we said yesterday, the president has been way too eager for a deal, and he's paid for it. The Wall Street Journal editorial page has a new piece out this morning, and it's called "Trump Needs a New Iran Strategy."
Yeah, I don't know about a new Iran strategy. He just needs to kill the enemy. Unconditional surrender. That mentality, General Grant mentality, okay? But the reason why we're in the situation we're in is because he thought that he was going to be able to be the master negotiator, that he was going to be able to bomb from the sky and threaten Iran and they'll just capitulate. Trump doesn't realize the Shiite religion is fanatical. And the IRGC is fanatical. Now, it doesn't mean they're not smart. See, with Iran, they're smart and fanatical. ISIS, in these pockets within the Middle East, they're fanatical but not too smart. Iraq, not too smart. Iran, smart. And so they're fanatical and smart. So you got a problem here. They will not capitulate. You have to go in and kill them. Trump thought that he can be just a master negotiator because he's from New York and he built a lot of buildings through just negotiating. Wrong strategy. So he needs to look in the mirror and realize he's not the great negotiator that he thought he was. He has to stop chickening out, and he has to kill.
Iran's large strike on Kuwait's airport was not a big deal, Mr. Trump said. A mere tit for tat. He said the same for Iran's Sunday strike on Israel, urging it not to reply since the missiles didn't hurt anybody. That logic leads to trouble. Only by a miracle did 2 U.S. pilots survive after an Iranian drone struck and burned inside their Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz on Monday. Yet Mr. Trump's early reaction was to say that this, too, wasn't a big deal.
An attack on an Apache helicopter.
Mr. Trump won't want to hear it, but he has been dancing to Iran's tune. He will have to break from it or go down as losing the war politically despite the early military gains. Mr. Trump still hopes for a diplomatic breakthrough, but even the press's favorite unnamed Pakistani officials are now downbeat. As long as Iran believes Mr. Trump is stuck with no alternative, it will squeeze him in the talks and in Hormuz. The president's choice now is to alter the facts on the ground or leave the conflict in a worse position than Mr. Bush did in Iraq.
And they talked about in this op-ed about what George W. Bush did with at the in 07 with the surge and how it made a difference, and said he's going to have to figure out militarily how to open up the strait and keep the strait open. Also, he may want to go in and do a joint operation with the Israelis to seize their nuclear material. Very risky move, the Wall Street Journal editorial says. But sitting back and waiting for the Iranians to negotiate and on the Iranians' goodwill, and loose always leads to trouble. You, of course, as everybody knows, you wrote the biography of Dr. Brzezinski that gets you inside the Carter White House during those tortuous days where Chris Matthews has said time and time again on this show, we would be told there was going to be a deal. We got excited. We did everything we thought that would line up the deal to get the hostages home, and then the Iranians would pull the rug out from under us. And he said they did it time and time again. This is what they do. They just play U.S. presidents. And if those U.S. presidents look like they need a deal, that's when things get really tough, because that's when the Iranians clamp down.
Yeah, I mean, they are famously known worldwide.
You have to kill them.
Just
That's the only answer.
Through history as very tough hagglers and negotiators, and they play for time, and they faint, and they walk off, and they play mind games with the people they're negotiating with. Carter did discover this to his lasting cost several times during that 1980 presidential campaign with Reagan. It looked like a deal to release the hostages was about to happen, really 4 or 5 times, and that would have transformed the mood on the campaign trail.
So I have a very nuanced strategy. Reduce our support for Israel. They need to be on their own. They need to purchase the weapons that they need from us. We shouldn't be giving it to them. We shouldn't be giving them some sort of aid and then them using the money to purchase the weapons. No. Israel needs to fund their own war. Their people need to be in the military and fight for their country. And on the other side, we need to put ground troops in strategic areas of Iran, destroy the IRGC, control the Strait of Hormuz, and control the oil and natural gas coming out of Iran. And work with the international community to reboot their country as a constitutional republic that is not part of some sort of monarchy. You start hearing in the news about the grandson of the Shah and the great-grandson of the Shah, and maybe they can come in and stabilize this. No. Constitutional republic. Reboot the Enlightenment in Iran. So Israel needs to pay their own way and fight on the battlefield themselves and American taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing it. And the United States military needs to be fully engaged to destroy the IRGC. 100% unconditional surrender. That's what should happen here. And in the end, we will have a more hegemonic power against China when we do this. But Trump's afraid. Trump's afraid. And you also have the Israelis that are spinning the news and trying to create havoc, where they continue to request and demand the need of the subsidies from the US. See, the news has a tendency to mix the issue. The United States will benefit from knocking out Iran. Israel will benefit from knocking out Iran. But that's not the main reason why we should be knocking out Iran. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, because it changes the whole ball game in the Middle East, our relationship with Russia, what's happening with China. It changes the whole ball game. So we can't allow that to happen, independent of Israel. So you have one side of mainstream media that's saying, well, you're either for Israel and going against Iran, or you're against Israel and just want to go away and leave the region. No, those are false choices. You can stop the subsidy with Israel and destroy Iran.
Pulled the rug. And it turns out, Iran really needed weapons because Saddam Hussein's Iraq had just invaded Iran. Iran really needed weapons, and so that was finally the leverage Carter had been seeking to get those hostages out. And they kept going right up to the brink of a deal, and lots of public positive statements from the White House, and then Iran will pull the rug. Now, there's a theory as to why that might have been happening in terms of the Reagan campaign's back-channel communications with the Iranians, but this has been going on for 47 years at least. I mean, the US presidents, with patience and time and a strategy and a theory of the case, like Barack Obama had with the 2015.
Almost all of those presidents, almost all of them, during those 47 years, had an Achilles heel. Dependent on oil from the Middle East. And we didn't reverse that Achilles heel until around 2016, 2015, 2016. Why? Why, Dr. Paul Cottrell, did it change? Fracking in energy production in the United States. We no longer have that Achilles heel that we had in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010. We are energy dominant. We can do this. But Trump is a chicken.
Get somewhere. But if you're in a hurry, Iran's got more time.
Yeah, they got more time, and they will walk away. As David Ignatius told us yesterday, you have to let the Iranians know that you're willing to walk away, and that you don't want the rug, or you don't want the nuclear deal. You've got to be willing to do that. They weren't. This headline, Willie, I'm noticing this headline. We have seen a headline in Financial Times for Ed Luce's article that somehow manages to insult supporters of both of the gentlemen in that headline. Trump supporters going, how dare you compare us to Jimmy Carter? And Jimmy Carter's supporters like,
Jimmy Carter was a failure.
Such a good man to Donald Trump, but there it is. The comment.
Jimmy Carter as a president was a failure. He was very intelligent. He was a naval. He went to the Naval Academy, was a nuclear engineer, smart guy, but a failed president. Nice person, great humanitarian, but terrible president. Trump is afraid. He's afraid. Both of them are going to go down in history. If Trump doesn't solve this problem, both of them will be in the same category, failed president, when it comes to the Iran affair.
Dominator, Iran.
Yes.
It is if you depend on the goodwill of Iran's negotiators, and if they see a weakness, man, they know how to leverage that, and they will exploit it. And Jimmy Carter had an election in 1980 that he was trying to make everything just right for, and the Iranians wouldn't do it. And now you have Donald Trump. They know he has some midterms to worry about, so they are not worried about.
But they didn't say that Mika, her father, Brzezinski, was part of the National Security Advisory Group for Jimmy Carter. Well, wait a minute here. Her father was the one that screwed up. Amazing how the circle of events happen.
And he says he doesn't care about the midterms. He said that out loud too, but he is clearly desperate to get a deal and to walk away from this war. Remember, he said again a couple of weeks ago, he's kind of bored. He finds his negotiations boring. He doesn't quite care. He'd love to turn the page to something else. And Richard, at the beginning of this war, President Trump thought he could bomb Iran into submission. We're the United States of America. We can do whatever we need to do. We heard that kind of swagger from the defense secretary as well. And it has turned out that Iran, as always, for generations and centuries, is a much more complicated problem than that is. So if the president is in the Situation Room yesterday talking to his national security team about new strikes, I guess the question is, to what end? You bomb more targets, and then what happens?
That's the emptiness of the Wall Street Journal editorial. That's the emptiness of the Secretary of War, as he now calls himself, saying that we're going to bomb our way to successful negotiations. There's nothing in history, recent or distant, that suggests that.
Well, wait a minute here. There's been 47 years. 47 years where the United States has failed in containing Iran and their exporting of terror. Richard Haas, President Emirates of the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations. That's the think tank that does the white papers trying to convince policymakers on what to do around the world. The CFR has failed for 47 years. He represents the failed policy.
Punches. So that's the triumph of hope over strategy, the triumph of hope over history and over experience. So that's not gonna work. Plus, as we've seen, the United States appears to have hit a water storage area in southern Iran.
You know what it is? These are all talk. They're just all talk. You got all those generals that go through West Point. Some of them even go to Harvard. All talk. Talk. Organization, build up organizations, buy weapons, procure weapons, have these very expensive weapon programs, maybe even get a golden parachute and work on the board of Raytheon. That's what we get here with people like Haas, CFR. Talk. Generals that can't win wars. Talk. There's a lesson to be learned here with the Civil War. The first generals that were part of the Civil War under Lincoln didn't want to fight. They were great cadets at West Point. They had great organizational skills. They had great training ability to instill into the recruits, but they weren't willing to fight. That sounds really familiar with what's going on today. And so you have Pete Hegseth that's saying, well, wait a minute here. We got a lot of generals that are pushing DEI and aren't willing to fight, and they have a lot of participation medals that didn't win wars. And, well, wait a minute here. They're out of shape too. This sounds very similar. Not willing to fight. It's time to find that General Grant to do the unconditional surrender. Talk, 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 talk.
Do we want to see? Do we want to see Iran go after the Saudi desalinization plants? Do we want to see basically most of the energy infrastructure and water infrastructure in the region has been off limits? The last thing in the world we should want to see is what has been a crisis become a true calamity for the region.
Why not?
The world.
Why not? That's what General Grant did. He choked and starved to death the Southerners to get them to capitulate. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? That's war. But then once everything settled down and they did their unconditional surrender at Appomattox, they were freed. They didn't have to do reparations. They were let go to be integrated in the society. Same thing can happen with Iran. Capitulate, unconditional surrender, and be part of the global economy. So the people of Iran could benefit from it. And there would be restructuring and rebuild and IMF and World Bank coming in to help out and all this stuff, stabilize the currency. We know how to do this. It's not a big deal. But here, the president of the CFR that's basically saying total war isn't allowed. But yet total war is what one World War II, one Civil War. Well, wait a minute here. Did we do total war in Korea? No. Korea never ended. It was armistice. Same thing technically for World War I, which led to World War II. What about Vietnam? No, we ran away from that one. What about Afghanistan? We ran away from that one too. What about Iraq? We kind of ran away from that one too.
Really careful.
Hey everybody, it's Mark Kelly. I'm here with John Ossoff here in Georgia because this is the most important Senate race this election cycle in the entire country. This is a place where Donald Trump won.
So we've got to be really careful. So not only will more military action probably
All
talk. Escalation will not serve us. The president knows that. Which, by the way,
what's the answer? What's the answer then, Richard? Is the answer?
Since he is the president of the CFR, don't you think that he should know American history? The answer is total war. Choke them to death. That's the answer. But can he say it? Please, Haas, please. Use your brain.
Using military options to open the strait? Is it the status quo? What is, if you were advising the president this morning, what would it be? What would you tell him?
I would tell him,
kill the Iranians.
Nuclear, just continue to send the message. So long as you don't change the status of the nuclear materials, we won't attack that. That's fine. We've lived with that for months, Joe. We can do that. And there'll be no financial transfers of any sort.
Keep the nuclear material, but don't enrich it anymore. That's what he just said. This is the president of the CFR, the Council of Foreign Relations that does the white papers and is the thinking group of our foreign policy. Now we know why we're fucked up. Shit. This is the reason why we have the problem. People like him. The intelligentsia isn't willing to fight.
You open the strait. We keep the blockade in place, and we have to wait. That is our strategy for now. Might mean waiting a little bit long. Iran is in serious economic difficulty, and what we try to do, I think we where we can, we ramp up economic pressure.
You sound like you agree with J.D. Vance more than Donald Trump, who always says this deal is 2 or 3 days away. J.D. Vance saying this might take a year. If you wanted, he didn't say if you want to do it the right way, but he said we may be in this fight for a year. But what you're saying is if you want to do this the right way, and you're the president, you're just going to have to wait it out. It's not going to be in 3 days. It's not going to be in 5 days. It might be in 3 to 5 months where you maintain the status quo. You have this sort of Cold War, and you wait for Iran to need a deal because they're being so choked off economically by the Richard Haas blockade, trademark reserve 2026.
You
Richard
can't
Haas.
do that, Morning Joe. Maybe you should drink your morning coffee. Morning Joe, the longer you wait, the less political capital Trump has to actually execute a war in Iran. It's common sense. Come on, Morning Joe. Wake up.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think it'll be a year. I think it's sooner than that. It is, again, as I was saying, the Achilles heel of this regime. You don't do things like the administration did, which was a letter of Iran, sell oil on the open market for the ships that were out there. So you look for every opportunity you have to ramp up the economic pressure. But yeah, Joe, it might take another few weeks or a few months, but I believe we will get there, and that is a better way to get there. Everything the Wall Street Journal proposes, sending in troops to take out the enriched uranium, are you kidding? You know, the risk of new bombing, a convoying operation in the Strait is really messy. The amount of naval assets and air assets you have to use to get...
Take the oil, natural gas, destroy the IRGC, use some of the funds to help pay for the war, and also help to build Iran through its reconstruction, stabilize its currency, help with rebooting their government as a constitutional republic, is the way to go. But Haas said it's okay to keep the nuclear material, Iran, as long as you don't make any more. As long as you don't do any further enrichment. What? Are you crazy? It's okay to have crazy Shiites running around as your leaders. Haas, wake up. It's a jungle out there. You better start acting like a lion. Haas is a dipshit.
No oil through. The ratios make no sense. So yeah, we don't have great options, and guess what? That's what happens when you start a war you shouldn't start.
So, Caddy, let's talk about the outcome of those
potentially
potentially not great options.
We weren't supposed to worry about the nuclear material from Iran. We're supposed to let them continue funding Hezbollah and Hamas. We're supposed to let them start to build up more missile capability in terms of range and accuracy, and build up their drone capability to threaten the GCC. That's what Haas is saying. President of the CFR. The paper belt, the intelligentsia of Boston, the intelligentsia of Washington, D.C., the intelligentsia of New York City. These people that are running these think tanks are crazy. Almost as crazy as the Shiites in Iran.
President Trump, he keeps threatening violence. Yes, we've seen a little bit of escalation the last couple of days, but he still doesn't want to resume full-fledged conflict. He's made that very clear, in part, as Richard just said, because the next steps would likely be, though he talked, striking infrastructure, striking power plants, striking water plants. And not only would that potentially create a humanitarian crisis in Iran, but more than that, more immediately.
Well, the southern states wouldn't capitulate until you created a humanitarian crisis. It's called total war. Hello? Why do we have in our mind that it is not acceptable to have total war? Where did this come from? I don't understand it. Do you want to win or not? The sad thing about institutions of higher learning, the Ivy League Plus, they produce people like Haas, Richard Haas. They're afraid to fight. They over-intellectualize it all. And we have points in history that if you do total war, you win. So why don't we just channel our inner General Grant or channel our Caesar, march into Gaul, and chop the fucking heads off? No. The CFR says that's a humanitarian crisis. And you wonder why the American empire is crumbling. Because we have an intelligentsia that doesn't know anything but to push paper.
The Iran striking back and doing the same to its neighbors in the region. So if we do just settle into this sort of Cold War, like low-level hostilities, what that's going to do is keep energy prices really high for a long time as we barrel towards the midterms.
Yeah, and every week that the energy price is higher, we're getting closer to November when that vote takes place. I think the only downside of what Richard's suggesting is that we could be reaching something of a more critical moment in energy prices from what I'm hearing, that US inventories are the lowest they've ever been on record at the moment because
it's not just the energy, but the baking in of inflation in goods and services. Permanently. Trump went too far with this. He needs to, in terms of trying to negotiate. He should have been smart enough to see that they were just playing him along. But he was afraid. It was a combination of he was too optimistic about getting some sort of realistic peace agreement. He was way too optimistic, and he was afraid. He was afraid to be General Grant. He was afraid to actually be Lincoln. And there's positive externalities when this happens. We'll be able to control the oil in that region and chokehold, if we need to, China. See, if we want to play nice with China, we'll let the oil flow. If we don't want to play nice with China, we shut them off. And this will force them to not go into Taiwan. Richard Haas didn't say that. Now, is he pro-China, or is he just too stupid to see this? I don't know. It could be a little bit of both.
Getting exported from the United States. The Chinese have been holding off on imports of oil, which is partly why the prices have not got higher, but that could change too. Now, the Iranians are getting some out. They're getting some out by truck through Pakistan. They're getting some out by truck through Turkey. So, yes, they're in a financial squeeze, but they are managing to export about half of what they were exporting before. They're not totally up against the wall in terms of their finances. So, if this takes a while, the question is, there are two parallel tracks. How long do we wait and how much is it going to take before the oil prices really spike? And then I think you have a political situation here that is not tolerable. I think the president can manage the situation here at the moment. But if we see this summer an extra spike in gas prices at the pump, that's going to cause him even more problems and make him want to wrap this up quicker.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, we're going to talk about SpaceX in its IPO. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. This will help to bring down systemic inflammation and also control your lipid profile. It helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you are reducing the probability of producing plaque formation in your vascular system. By taking omega-3, you are going to improve your cardiovascular health. Super important to take. Heart disease is rampant in the United States. A lot of people don't realize. You actually start cardiovascular disease when you're 16 or 15 years old. It's asymptomatic in most cases, but it's there. So pay attention. Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. And that will allow you to get into 3 cycles to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep per night to allow you to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, and to be well rested. When you have good sleep regularly, you slow down the aging process and improve brain function. People that are chronically sleep deprived increase the chances of early onset of dementia. If you're 40 years of age or older, take vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex helps to boost up your energy levels, rev up your cellular metabolism, and protect neurons. The first 4 B vitamins help with the electron transport chain within your mitochondria to boost up your ATP. And when you have more ATP, the cells perform better. When your cellular metabolism is better, guess what? Your tissues perform better. And when you have vitamin B12, you're protecting your neurons. It's super important to take every day. Get the vitamin B complex. And vitamin D3, dual purpose. It helps with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. If you're sick, you want to take vitamin D3 to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis because they're infected. This is the reason why you should be taking it during the cold season. And vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. Do some resistance training. Build denser bone. That's super important. There's too many people that have osteoporosis or osteopenia in the United States. And if you have brittle bones and you fall, guess what? 2-3 weeks later, you're dead. So guess what? Get the vitamin D3, do some resistance training. And vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3, the vitamin B complex, the good night formula, take it every night. You don't want to be stupid. And omega-3 to boost up your cardiovascular health. Now, if you're improving your cardiovascular health, improving your brain function, boosting up your energy levels, helping with your bone density, don't you think that you're actually going to age better? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Find your next possibility on cars.com. Where to next?
Websites your competitors don't want you to know, part 2. All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly how much your competitors are making.
The hype around this IPO is extraordinary. It's done everything slightly differently. Like, we know the price that they're aiming for, even though there's so-called technical pricing tomorrow. It's going to be $135, we understand. Of course, it's going to be raising up to $1.8 trillion of market valuation and $75 billion of new equity. But this is going to be 30% allocated to the retail community. They're still going to be able to get allocation.
Can get a piece of this
tomorrow. Right? What's interesting is, of course, depending on who you get allocation through, is how quickly you're allowed to flip it. Now, a lot of these retail offerings, if you go and buy it through Fidelity, they're going to punish you if you try and sell it on the day. So you're going to be like contained for 15 days. But there's a lot of volatility.
Be very careful with SpaceX. I believe in the company, long-term vision. They may even bankrupt AT&T and Verizon if they play it right. But SpaceX is definitely going to be a very important company. But be careful. There's going to be a lot of people buying in at the retail, at the institutional investor level, and at the fund level, where they have to track a particular fund like NASDAQ or whatever. So you have fund managers buying in, institutional investors buying in, family offices buying in, retail. Wait. Because all of this flood of money coming into the IPO, it's going to go up, right? So if it's going at 145 or whatever, it may go up to 180, 200. But be patient. It's probably going to go down 30% from the high. And when it retraces to 20, 25, 30%, buy and hold it. Be patient. Don't be stupid.
There's many think that the price is going to be pushed higher by the amount of passive funds. They're going to rush in to buy SpaceX because there's been this fast tracking of entry into a lot of the main indices, like the NASDAQ, for example, of SpaceX shares. And so suddenly, if you're a passive fund and you need allocation, there's going to be this sort of fuel and frenzy behind it. But all of this is to say that demand is clear. $250 billion worth is what's been reported by Reuters, and we understand from our sources that that is similar in terms of level of demand. Some big fund managers are coming in asking for up to $10 billion worth. of SpaceX shares because, of course, they've got so many funds.
See, this is the point I'm making. The flow of funds is going to be great, but then all of a sudden it's going to die off. And then when they do their quarterly earnings and they show that, you know, that they have a long-term, you know, vision for profitability, and what's going to happen is there's going to be a 20-30% retracement. But buy. Then that's the time to buy and hold it. Maybe accumulate over time more shares. This is something that I don't think SpaceX is a stock that you should be buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. Don't be stupid. Accumulate. But wait for the retracement and hold it. And if you take my advice and you do this, you may end up being a millionaire over time, like 10, 15 years down the road.
And then you're looking at which particular areas, in geographically, the Middle Eastern investors who have been very long the AI trade, very much planning into XAI, OpenAI, Anthropic. Well, we know the Kuwaiti investment fund has been asking for about $5 billion worth. We know that there's been big demand coming from the other players as well. So clearly, the hype cycle's there. I mean, we've just got 2 more days to white knuckle this.
Yeah, like Prince Alawi bin Talal, he was one of the early backers of Elon Musk. He's going to get a big payday, it looks like, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting as to whether people hold on to their allocation, whether it's paper money, whether they want to sell more broadly in the future. And look, this is why there was that great reporting yesterday, wasn't there, showing the truest data that if you look back at the 30 biggest tech IPOs in the last 15 years, generally, a majority of them will sink in their first 12 months of trade. That's because lockups expire. CEOs and people want to be able to make some profit. Liquidity wanted from some of the people that work at these companies. So there is some sort of pressure, but more broadly, this looks as though a lot of people are going to be not only holding it in their private funds, but maybe wanting to even buy it in their public funds too. Maybe they want even more skin in the game.
All right, I'm going to put on my analyst hat here. Valuation. Bloomberg Television had a great graphic they ran yesterday, just looking at IPOs, big tech IPOs, multiples of revenue, and 15 here, 20 times there, crazy stuff we never talked about back in the day. This one, SpaceX, 95 times revenue.
It's kind of like Tesla, right?
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Is there any pushback you've heard from the marketplace? From some of these meetings on valuation, I haven't really seen any.
I think it's all about whether you believe in the cult of Elon Musk, whether you believe in the idea of getting orbital data centers. They've started to at least show demonstrations, pictures, if you like, of how that might work. So that's been a key focus. But really, in the same way that Tesla does not trade on fundamentals of electric vehicles, nor does SpaceX. It's bigger than the sum of its parts when you're putting all the business together, because it is the idea of Mars, it is the idea of the moon, it is the idea, though, that this currently is almost a monopoly. Look, who else has been making these reusable rockets, the cadence and the reliability that we've seen with the Falcon 9, now with Starship managing to demonstrate such feats of science? I think for many it's just like, well, I've been burnt if I bet against it in the past.
But there has been some pushback, particularly New York and California pension funds. And the concern there by the controllers seems to be Elon has too much control.
Governance. And in fact, funnily enough, shock horror who's weighed into this as well, is Elizabeth Warren is sending a last-minute ditch attempt to the SEC, Paul Atkins, saying, look, you've got to stop this IPO process because I'm worried about governance and I'm worried about safety of retail investors. As you are seeing the fast tracking of shares going into some of these big indices. Look, whether you like it or not, you're probably going to have exposure to SpaceX because it's going to be in your 401k. It's going to be in some of these, as you say, the funds that are managed by New York City, by New York State, they're pension funds, right? And they're saying, look, we're not so averse to this that we're going to rule out them in our funds. But we are going to keep trying to chew Elon's ear, trying to get letters to him, which he thus far hasn't responded to, saying, we're worried about this. We're worried about your 80% voting rights. We're worried about the overall governance structure of the business. And look, like, for many investors, they want a founder mindset. They want the ability of Elon Musk to be able to drive forward with the big decisions. And for many long-term bettors on him in the private markets, they kind of love that. In fact, that's why they think eventually SpaceX and Tesla should merge.
Be careful with SpaceX IPO. Wait it out. But I do think long-term you should hold hold SpaceX. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the cleanse or the Max 35. This will help to boost up your innate immune system. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 to 30 seconds. This will help to improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain a mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. Super important. So you take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or so, and then swallow. I've been doing this for over 6 years every day. Now, if you're not feeling well because of allergies, take a tablespoon or so. During the cold season, take a tablespoon. And once everything's all clear, go back to your maintenance dose every day of a teaspoon. Now, this protocol works and it helps to boost up that innate immune system, helps protect that oral pharynx, which is super important. So please go to my store, get the Max 35 and the cleanse. Now, think about this. If you constantly have allergies or you're constantly getting sick, it takes time for your body to heal. So when your cells are damaged, they either go into permanent necrosis or temporary necrosis. Permanent necrosis, and then they have to die off and go through an apoptosis pathway. But if it's temporary necrosis, then it takes time for it to revert back to a healthy cell. So if you're chronically sick or chronically have allergies, your body is constantly trying to remodel and heal itself. So you age faster. You look at people that have chronic allergies or always getting sick from the common cold, they age faster. You boost up your immune system, your allergies will start to diminish and you're sick less often. And therefore your body can slowly heal other areas and concentrate to help you slow down the aging process. You look at people that are older and they get sick all the time, guess what? They age faster. Now, take my advice, get the Max 35 or the cleanse. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. Follow the protocol. Now, I also have structural nano silver drops and lozenges. I have it in cherry flavor for the drops, and the lozenges are in orange splash, fortified with vitamin C, and manuka honey. Take them right away once you have a throat irritation. You can take them prophylactically if you're cleaning the house and to neutralize because you're around dust particles or outside. Use the drops or the lozenges to be able to create the secretions to protect your oral pharynx and block those antigens that you're breathing in. Another little tip to prevent allergies during the season, lightly coat your nostrils with the structural nano silver gel. But if you pay attention to me, you won't get sick as often and your allergy will go down. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Oh, 11 minutes ago, Pentagon in lockdown over biohazard incident.
We have breaking news at the Pentagon. We are continuing to follow this big story right now. According to the Pentagon, the hazardous materials team is now scrubbing several locations inside the Pentagon's A-ring. That's the centermost location in that building. And this is a live look there now. So you can't see what they're doing on the inside. And again, I'm still working to find out when exactly this started. We know that there was an ex-post that said that units were, including their hazmat team, were currently operating at the Pentagon along with their Pentagon Force Protection Agency. That doesn't tell us exactly what they have found, but we do know, according to a source, that this is after systems detected a problem with the air quality in the building. So the air quality in that centermost part of the Pentagon, those offices inside that structure, a device picked up some kind of biohazard scent And the Pentagon source we've been talking to at Fox News says that they haven't found anything yet. There's no indication that this is nefarious. And there is a shelter in place for people close to that area of the Pentagon. So I would term that as...
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible.
Ignorant kid. Code. Interesting.
Can it generate reports? It can now.
Nice.
Pentagon. So I would term that as, having been there, it's been many years I've been in that close, but my dad worked there for years. I can tell you that that's a lockdown situation. So no one in, no one out. And they want other people to stay away from that area of the building, and they are testing the air now in several locations to make sure whatever was detected.
My knee-jerk reaction on this, because this is breaking news here, my knee-jerk reaction is the sensor that's picking something up is faulty. And this is a nothing burger. That's my gut feeling on this.
Situation that can spread. So I want to get more detail now on exactly how long this incident has been going on, because what's important about that is those areas are tight, and you want to know, well, has it spread? And so, yes, it is great to have people not go into that area. Have they started evacuating anybody out of that building? So we are watching for that. Our Lucas Tomlinson, we are rounding up our team right now. Our Lucas Tomlinson will be live at the White House just moments from now. But as you look at the structure, you can see the enormity. And on any given day, you have thousands of people inside the Pentagon. You have contractors coming in and out. I mean, it would be an untold number of people that would be gathered in meetings and that sort of thing inside this huge structure. So with a certain number of them on lockdown at the center point, and also if you can go back, and I don't know, this is file, but our live shots seem to have a better overhead view of the Pentagon. Yeah, you can see that open area in the center. And then all around that, in that first ring, are the offices that we're talking about. And then it just sort of spins on around, and it gets wider and wider and wider. Again, thousands of people. Lucas Tomlinson is live at the White House with more on this. Lucas, what are your sources telling you?
Well, right now, Harris, we have a statement that just came out from the Pentagon, from Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell. I'll read it for our audience. It says, quote, "The Pentagon has sophisticated systems to ensure the safety of the building and its occupants. These systems have detected an air quality issue necessitating precautionary measures until we determine its significance. The department is executing standard protection protocols, including a shelter in place for the affected area. Response teams are in place and ready to support the building." We just learned from Arlington County Fire Department, they have dispatched some hazmat units to the Pentagon on any given day. Harris, you mentioned there's about 20,000 people at the Pentagon, the largest office building in the United States, one of the largest office buildings in the world. For now, this appears to be a detection issue, no verification that there is, in fact, actual hazardous material. We learned that some areas of the Pentagon are being scrubbed down. But, of course, anybody walking into the Pentagon, whether you work there, you've been cleared. The general public cannot just walk into the Pentagon, and certainly anyone carrying any hazardous material you think would be detected. But tour groups, there are some tour groups that do go through the Pentagon.
I'm 80% sure it's the sensor. It went bad. It's not a big deal.
Things again are scrubbed before entering the Pentagon. So right now this appears to be an alarm. We have no confirmation that there's actually hazardous material inside the Pentagon.
To go. And when you go in, you bring up a wonderful point. It's also very hard to even get to the doors that lead into the inner sanctum area where you see, Secretary of War in those offices. And so getting into that area, you have to have a reason to be there. It's more than just them checking ID and all of that. Yeah. But what can you tell me, and of course you have served, and so I know you've been in and out of that building as well. What can you tell me about the A-ring at the Pentagon, which is where they first detected this hazmat scent through, and what they're looking at right now, whether or not it's nefarious or something naturally occurring and just too much of it?
If you have a picture of the Pentagon, Harris, to share with our audience, the A-ring is the most closest to the center of the Pentagon. The E-ring would be the outer perimeter of the Pentagon. The A-ring is the the center point of the Pentagon. It goes A through E. There's a numbered system with corridors 1 through 9. And so the A-ring would be the closest to the courtyard. As you can see on this map, you see the courtyard there in the middle of the Pentagon. Obviously, as the name suggests, is a 5-sided building with about 20,000 people that work there on any given day. And you mentioned the contractors, Harris. Of course, you have service members from all the branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force now working there. You also have service secretaries. You have the Joint Chiefs. So you have the top military officials from each branch represented there. Needless to say, there's a lot of brass that works in the Pentagon on any given day, which is why this is a story we're talking about right now. It's in fact, I was in the Pentagon years covering for Fox. I don't recall any hazardous material alarm ever being sounded. So what makes it notable? But again, we have to stress right now it's an indication, an alarm that there's hazardous material, but we have not received any confirmation that there's actually hazardous material in the building. There is some precautionary scrubbing from some hazmat teams, and the Arlington County Fire Department is on scene, we're told.
And if memory serves, it's really interesting. It's about 17 and a half miles of corridors through there. But I remember that even though it's that big, it only takes you a few minutes to walk to any 2 points because of the efficiency and the design of this. So when you talk about moving people around in that structure, it's very efficient to do that. I have a map in my hand from one of our team members, and I'm hoping we can get this on the screen because you needed it too when you were talking, but you did a wonderful job of telling us what we're looking at. So the A-ring is that inner area. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's office is on the 2nd floor of this 5-story building.
That would be the E-ring.
And that's in the E-ring, and you mentioned that. And so is General Payne's office. In fact, I know they're, not far from one another. That's on the 1st floor. So it is 5 floors above ground plus a mezzanine and a basement. So when I tell you, and the number can be as many as 27,000 people in that structure at one time, when I tell you that it can hold a lot of people, as you and I have been saying, Lucas, don't doubt that for a minute because not everybody works there. It can be those contractors. So we've got that. Lucas, please stay with me. I want to welcome into the conversation Bill Daley, former FBI investigator. Bill, are you with us?
I'm with you.
All right, you're joining us by phone. Lucas is with me too on screen, so we will toggle back and forth. First of all, have you been able to find out anything? And as you watch this, what do you think is most important for us to know?
Well, as I'm watching it unfold, there are a couple of things to be thinking about. First of all, is that, as you and Lucas have said, is that the Pentagon is really kind of a city by itself. In fact, the metro stop that goes underneath the Pentagon is Pentagon City. It's a huge complex, both above, below ground, and as you said, it has many thousands of people working there at any one given day. I would probably say, as having worked more so in the private sector and looking at facilities after 9/11, I don't know specifics and certainly wouldn't speak about them if I knew about the Pentagon, but I would just say broadly is that many buildings, including government buildings, have put in sensors to detect any biological, chemical type of weapons, whether it be coming through air systems, whether they be released by some other mechanism within the building. Certainly that was the concern after 9/11 when we saw kind of anthrax being sent to various news organizations. So a lot of focus was given on how to detect these. So we don't know at this point whether or not this was just a sensor that perhaps had contributed for some other miscellaneous reason or unrelated to an actual contamination, or whether it was something else that was some way brought into the facility, gotten into the facility somehow and released. So we're still waiting for all that, but I think what it does go to show us is that how effectively and efficiently that they're working on being able to safeguard people, to deal with the issues at hand. And as we go further along, and just kind of taking a bit through its natural progression, if this was in any way something more nefarious, and certainly something that was planned, that facility would have extensive coverage with regard to, closed circuit camera system and access control, and there are certainly, compartmentalization that goes on within that facility that they have various levels of being able to understand who's in there at any one time. Lucas has talked about perhaps, tour groups coming through, but all these, if you are going in a tour group, you need to be screened, you need to provide information about who you are. You just don't go show up at the door and say, I want a tour. So there's a lot of things that can be done afterwards to find out, in fact, if something was put in for some nefarious purposes. But at this point, it could very well be perhaps a sensor or some other mechanism that is indicating that there's some type of contamination, or maybe release of some material that is being detected as being contaminated when in fact it's maybe related to construction or something else going on.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up all those points, and your acumen as a detective and an investigator for the FBI is certainly showing, because you're coming up with scenarios that would explain things that you have seen before, and that's in an investigation and even in a response like this, I would say, Bill, really where you start. You want to just, first of all, take off the checklist all the things you've seen and what it could be that we know that we could be looking for, and then you're going to go deeper and look for other things. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now.
I don't think it's a big issue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nail silver toothpaste. Has no fluoride, will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize. Also, it'll improve your gum line and bring down inflammation at the gum line. Super important to take. Use it every day. This structural nano silver toothpaste will improve your oral cavity, and by improving your oral cavity, you're improving your cardiovascular health. A lot of people don't realize there is a correlation between oral health and cardiovascular disease. It's not the only way to get cardiovascular disease, but good oral hygiene is super important, especially for valvular disease. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this structural nano silver toothpaste. Get a few tubes of it for your home. Use it every day, especially during the cold season. Now, structural nano silver gel, dual purpose. You can get it in the tube form or the quick dispenser called Renew. Use it the same way. You can put it on your skin as a daily skincare to improve the top of your skin. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. They'll help to heal it quicker, about 1/3 of the time quicker. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. If you're outside and you get allergies, lightly coat your nostrils, and it'll help you to mitigate those allergens. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Renew, which is the quick dispenser structural nano silver gel, or the tube version. Both are very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, if you're 40 years of age or older, it's hard to build muscle and maintain muscle. It's called atrophy. Myotrol will slow down the atrophy and allow you to build muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. This will also help the health of the mitochondria within your muscle to have the energy to maintain and build that muscle. Myotrol will also help athletes, younger or older, to build muscle. And you can take Myotrol separately, or you can stack it with Gladiator barley to build muscle. So do some resistance training, take the Myotrol for gene expression. And I highly recommend stacking it with the Gladiator barley. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, prevent atrophy. And when you're building more muscle, you're producing more myokines, you're producing higher concentrations of BDNF, and you're protecting your neurons. A lot of people don't realize that musculature, when you're older, you're protecting your brain. Super important. And with more resistance training, you're also strengthening your bones, you're improving your posture. When you're improving your back muscles, you're improving the posture, you're helping with venous return flow to your heart. So better back posture, because of better musculature in your back, will lead to better cardiovascular health and better lymphatic flow. You're going to be able to have that flow move better. Why? Well, by having better back posture, you're not hunched over, and you're going to have easier flow upward for your lymphatic system and your venous return flow to your heart, but also by building up muscles, especially in your legs, in your calves. That muscle, that calf muscle, acts like a heart. And it helps to pump blood from the lower extremities back to the heart. And that pulsation, with contraction of musculature also helps to squeeze the lymphatic system and have it to return. So musculature is super important for lymphatic flow, venous return flow to your heart, and also brain function. So please go to my store, law-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen in to Bloomberg.
In Iran. You heard about this yesterday, right around this time on this program, when we spoke with Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, who recommended that very move and more. Here's what she said.
The only option is to win. Trump has to finish what he started. And the key is stop waiting for a deal. Finish it. They're very weak. But what you have to do is go after their finances. You do have to acknowledge Carg Island is where they get their revenues from. And at some point, that's going to have to be addressed.
And just like that, less than 24 hours later, the United States will be hitting Iran, the president writes, very hard tonight. At some point in the not-too-distant future, we'll be taking Carg Island and other oil infrastructure points and assume total control of their oil and gas markets, much like we have with Venezuela. So somebody put Carg Island back in the water here. And we want to talk more about what this would mean and what it would take to seize the island with the help of the great Dr. Rebecca Grant, Senior Fellow Vice President for Defense Programs at the Lexington Institute. Doctor, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg. We've got lots of questions for you, and I know that you and I talked about this very thing, as I mentioned in the outset of this conflict. Now that we struck some targets on Carg Island, what would be involved in seizing it?
This actually would be a lot easier than it would have been back in February or March. There was a heavy series of strikes. About 90 targets were hit. They hit some military facilities, obviously left all the oil infrastructure alone. Back in March, it was hit again in April. And I'm going to tell you, from a pure tactical perspective, this is very doable for the forces that Central Command has in the region. We've got the USS Tripoli, which is a helicopter carrier with 2,000 Marines embarked. A lot of Army forces also up there in Kuwait and throughout the theater. So, you do the standard procedure. You put the air power over top of it, constant close air support, and then a possibility air assault. There's even a small runway already on Carg Island.
Oh, fascinating. Seizing it is one thing, holding it is another. Rebecca Grant, would we need a no-fly zone, or do we already have the assets in place for force protection if we had men and women on Carg Island?
Exactly. Force protection is at the top of the list. We already kind of have a no-fly zone. We have air dominance over that region. And the fact that President Trump is speculating about this reconfirms to me that he has looked at plans for Carg Island. They've probably been working on these for months and refining them. A force protection, that's going to come down to counter drone, counter UAS, and counter missile systems. But if you think about it, it's not unlike defending an airbase in a forward area, or like in Afghanistan when we would send forces forward at a forward army and refueling point and know we needed to defend that perimeter and that airspace. It's not unlike defending Guam, for example. So this is something that the Army, the Air Force, and Navy as well together are very, very capable of doing. I think they can button up the airspace over Carg Island. The president will have been briefed on the prospect of casualties, whatever that may be, we don't know. But this is something that can definitely be done, and you don't need a big occupying force on Carg Island. You hold all the approaches to it. We don't need to put a lot of American ground forces in there once we have it.
Really, it's interesting to hear you describe it like this, because so many have gone out of their way to talk about what a high-risk operation this would be for our military. But I'm curious, you mentioned drones, and we saw the use of an autonomous ship, that Corsair, that picked up the 2 downed Apache crew members earlier this week. To what extent, if any, Could we rely on automated technology, drones, and the like to do some of the job that men and women might normally do?
Yes, well, that pickup was amazing. And remember, Admiral Brad Cooper, who's the commander of U.S. Central Command, his previous job, he was in charge of all the Navy unmanned surface vessel experimentation in the Gulf, Task Force 59. He is an expert in all of these things. So what we're seeing is a lot of manned, unmanned teaming between systems across all the services. And yes, we will do that. Now, to actually take Rhode Island, that is going to involve U.S. Soldiers, Marines, Special Forces going in there to do that. Because I think what Trump would want is to leave the oil facilities running and simply take that over. There is definitely risk in this operation, but tactically, it is doable.
A higher risk operation might be unearthing the highly enriched uranium that we've spent so much time talking about. The president calls it the nuclear dust. That would be more men material and would take a longer period of time, right, to actually excavate and remove that material. Have we been refining plans to do that as well?
Oh, probably. They haven't showed them to me. But it's the same concept that with the amount of air dominance we have, you air assault forces establish a perimeter, defend that perimeter, and because Iran's drone and missile capabilities have been so beaten down, we've got a good chance of doing this. And remember, we've got forces that were very experienced with operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and they know how to defend a perimeter and defend a site like that. So it's not no risk. It does take time, but that basic concept of air assaulting into an area, holding it, and getting a job done, whether it's taking out nuclear dust or seizing the oil pumping facilities. That is something our military is trained and ready to do.
Really interesting. The president talked quite a bit yesterday about next steps, knowing that he is still, of course, trying to pursue a diplomatic track here, but it sure looks like military activity is more likely. When he talks about hitting them even harder tonight, Rebecca Grant, are we talking about water facilities, power plants? What actually makes a dent for this regime?
It is possible to put some of those legitimate military infrastructure targets on the list. When he talks about hitting harder, my mind immediately goes to strikes from our bombers, our B-1s, B-52s, B-2s as well, that carry the heavy ordnance. Also our F-15Es, our F-16s, F-35s that carry heavy ordnance. We did Tomahawk strikes just recently, great weapon, but it's a relatively smaller warhead. I think he's talking about taking out some more of the industrial targets. Anything where Iran was trying to sweep up the dust and get back in business, he may have on the strike list.
Yeah. Nobody embraces the quality of our exquisite weapons quite the way Dr. Rebecca Grant does. Somebody mentioned on the program yesterday, when the president talked about the actual ships and oil that we've been sneaking through at night for some time now, he said 100 million barrels, and Iran just found out about it. Is that because of that Apache that went down? Was that Apache helping to provide protection for ships going through the strait, do we think?
We know that the Apaches have been driving off IRGC small boats and doing counter-drone kills for about a month. So they haven't said anything official, but I believe, yes, that Apache was creating safer conditions across the Strait of Hormuz. It's an incredibly capable platform with a lot of new upgrades.
What's very interesting about Dr. Grant, Rebecca Grant? She reminds me of Martha Stewart. There's a Martha Stewart aspect to her, even the way she talks.
Has had that drone up there, and I suspect the Apache crew may have been trying to shoot it down as well. Yes, and the Apaches, they're up there right now, working in that area, of course.
Is the drone threat still the most serious to our aircraft and boats?
The drone threat is still there. I would say it's a challenging threat, but one where we have a lot of overmatch. There's also a missile threat too. Iran is still able to shoot here and there. It is not enough to dislodge either our great U.S. Navy blockade, of course, our two carriers, or to really threaten our land-based air. So we still have the freedom of action and all the overwhelming advantage. But yes, we're trying to get after the remnants of that drone and missile threat.
Really interesting. It's always great to spend some time with you, Dr. Rebecca Grant. Famously at the Lexington Institute. Think of this as your intelligence briefing like the president would get in the morning. Doctor, thank you. We appreciate your expertise. These are...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you have pain, either because of arthritis, a sprain, pulled muscle, tension headache, take the Super Strong Relief. This will work within 90 seconds to relieve your pain or eliminate the pain temporarily. It's very strong. It's a great way to alleviate arthritic pain. So please go to my store and get the Super Strong Relief.
And what appears to be a first ever exploration of this Spy Powers Act. We'll talk about it with Rick and Jeannie a little bit later on in the program at the top of the hour. Kaylee Lyons' conversation with Senator Todd Young. We'll spend time with Congressman Greg Lett.
All right, let's listen in to live now about this Pentagon incident.
Sacred releases immediately and blocks acid that causes heartburn for 24 hours. Feel the difference.
Cool any room in 90 seconds with this NASA-engineered affordable device. It's smaller than a toaster, cools any room in 90 seconds, and uses just a...
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox as we continue to follow some breaking news out of the Pentagon. This is a social media post from the Arlington Fire and EMS. They shared this maybe just about 20 minutes or so ago, stating that their ACFD units, including our hazardous materials team, are currently operating at the Pentagon in support of the Pentagon's hazmat team during a hazardous materials incident. We do have a live look there outside of the Pentagon. This is a live look from the exterior of the building. And we have seen the camera pan from side to side. As we take a look at this, we really can't see much in terms of that hazmat incident. And the information that we're getting into our newsroom is just that tweet stating that Arlington Fire and EMS units, including their hazardous materials team, are currently operating at the Pentagon in support of the Pentagon's hazmat team during a hazardous materials incident. Still a lot of questions left unanswered at this hour, including what specifically the potential hazardous materials include and what led to this incident. We've been keeping a very close eye on social media posts as well as websites with the Pentagon. And as of now, we don't have any particular information, but this is a relatively large police presence as there are multi-agencies responding to this particular incident itself. This is from Fox News saying that a hazardous materials incident reported at the Pentagon by emergency officials in Arlington, Virginia. So at this hour, what we do know is that Arlington EMS is responding in conjunction with the hazardous materials unit at the Pentagon itself, resulting in a large police presence right there. I'm continuing to comb some of these informations, and I'm pulling up our Fox 5 DC web article on this. It also shares that, stating that an incident involving hazardous materials prompted an emergency response at the Pentagon this morning. The Arlington Fire and EMS said its units, including its hazardous materials team, responded to assist the Pentagon Force Protection Agency with this situation. As we continue to read this article, it says officials have not released details about the type of hazardous materials involved. So this continues to be developing at this hour. As we continue to gather more information, we will bring that to you. It's also unclear as to where specifically in the Pentagon this incident occurred. But this is a live look outside of the Pentagon itself, as we do see traffic there moving.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, your hair, your nails, musculature, bone density, even joint health. Take it every day. It's a powder. It's a month's supply. If you take a full scoop, some people take a half a scoop, and therefore this container would last you about 2 months. It depends on your height, your BMI. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen. This is a powder, so you can mix it with soft foods. I mix it with hummus. You mix it with yogurt, a smoothie, milk, filtered water. Some people even put it in coffee. So please go to my store and get the collagen and help to improve your dermal layer, your musculature, your bone density, your joints. Really important to do this regularly. Now, collagen works even better if you take the vitamin C and magnesium supplement that I have on my store and drink filtered water. The vitamin C will cross-link with the collagen and improve your dermal layer. So please go to my store, get the collagen and the vitamin C and magnesium.
It's 12:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Stocks are higher, beating down chip makers, getting a lift right now. You have the stocks advancing by 3.7%. Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index. All of this with the S&P right at 7,300 even, up 33 right now, up by about 0.5%. Dow Industrials back above 50,000, 50,280, higher by 360 points. The Dow up 0.7%. The Nasdaq Composite Index up 0.7%. The Nasdaq 100 Index up 1.2%. All this with a VIX above 21 and a 10-year at 4.53%. Gold, $4,083 the ounce, up 0.3%. And advance for West Texas Intermediate Crude up 1.4%. 91.31 a barrel. Barrel of Brent, 93.84, up by 0.8%. Bottom line here, traders are facing a cautious rebound in stocks, even though lingering worries about an escalation in the Middle East conflict are whipsawing the oil market. So with those heightened tensions, why are stocks higher, even as oil climbs? Tracy McMillian is Global Head of Asset Allocation Strategy at Wells Fargo Bank.
Investors are hoping that the latest escalation in the war is going to bring both parties back to the negotiating table and that we'll finally see some progress there.
Tracy McMillian of Wells Fargo. Ken Griffin is expanding his bet on Miami, and fresh off a clash with New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, Griffin has updated his plans for a multi-billion-dollar commercial tower and development along Biscayne Bay. The billionaire Citadel founder has revealed a proposal to construct a 300-unit apartment building, and a 1,420-space parking garage alongside another office building that Griffin owns. Stocks higher. S&P up 29, up by about 0.4%. The 10-year, 4.53%. Again, the VIX just above 21. I'm Charlie Hallett. Joe Matthew. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. A little different than things looked around this time yesterday. We'll have more from Charlie on the markets coming up at the top of the hour. 1 p.m. Eastern, hour 2 of Balance of Power. Kaylee's making her way back over from the Capitol. She just was up there interviewing Senator Todd Young. And we'll welcome our global television audience to the conversation. For now, it's just us kids and our panel in just a moment. As we look ahead to the big birthday bash on Sunday, I was regaling, if you weren't with us earlier, my story of getting the first glimpse of the Claw earlier today. Cece's a big fan of the Claw. She's part of the reason why I went. You stand under this thing, it's almost 100 feet tall. It's taller than the White House itself. And yeah, you've got the octagon there. It's all set for the cage match. And these guys will be kicking the heck out of each other on Sunday night, wondering if it's going to rain or even bring thunder and lightning. If you're in the stands, or one of the fans, you're probably not going to be covered if that's the case.
I am totally against this, being on the White House lawn. It's just bread and circus. It's to try to entertain you, so you're not focusing on the real issues of the day, like oil prices. WTI is trading at $91 a barrel. How inflation is at 4.2%. How the K-shaped economy is hurting many middle-class Americans. We should be focusing on that. What about what the Federal Reserve will do? The job market, artificial intelligence, and how it's hurting potentially the job market, which there's data points that suggest that's what's happening. You know, but it's bread and circus. Bread circus. This is not presidential. This is the problem with Trump.
Nitro Circus Tour. If you're on YouTube, look at that. Where the heck do you put a motorcycle ramp? With all, is he going to end up in the trees? Does he jump over the White House itself? This is going to be a heck of a weekend in Washington. And the president's going to be in a mood because FISA just failed. You know, he was talking about it on Truth Social yesterday. It's FISA 702. Everyone's upset about Bill Pulte. Yes, D's and R's. It was a bipartisan failure a short time ago in the House of Representatives, right before we came to air. 218 to 198, 19 Republicans joining nearly every Democrat in opposing this would be a first ever expiration of FISA 702. And it's because of opposition to Bill Pulte being the DNI. If you're with us, you know this whole saga by now. The president told Speaker Johnson yesterday he's actively working on a new name, on a permanent replacement for Tulsi Gabbard. Until we hear a name, this might not pass. And we're almost 24 hours away from the expiration. Let's bring in our political panel to get through all this. Maybe not the motorcycle jump. I don't know if Jeannie's into that, but they're both with us now. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis. She is our Democratic analyst, democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick is back too, Republican strategist and partner at Stone Court Capital. What's it like, Jeannie, for Democrats to be joined by 19 Republicans in saying no to the president?
First of all, Joe, I want you to know I'm very much into motorcycle jumps. Do you?
I don't really care if Jeannie likes motorcycles. I really don't. FISA shouldn't have taken place because it erodes your constitutional freedoms, because it's just tied to the national security state to intrude on your freedoms. We shouldn't have this. This FISA thing was out of control. This is a tangential echo from the Biopatriot Act. Not the Biopatriot, the Patriot Act. But it being reinstated or extended is going to be an element of the Biopatriot Act. Now, for the ones that don't know what I'm talking about, the crisis that we went through in 2020 was like a 9/11 event. And that there were certain powers that the government wanted through HHS and through the military and track and tracing and digital currency. All this stuff is tied into what I call legislation in a patchwork that could be put under the umbrella of the Biopatriot Act. And what it does is that it allows for further erosion of your constitutional freedoms and more government control through the surveillance state. So, no, sunset FISA. You don't need it. But they turn it into a political fight with Trump. No, it's not about Trump. They should just not extend it because we shouldn't have it.
Gotta be honest, I'm not sure I believed it, that this would happen, that we would get to this point. Is 702 going dark tomorrow?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm still stunned that Congress hasn't really figured out a way to manage this through the process. Yeah, I mean, best I can tell, the Senate failed on Wednesday to pass a bill in the House today. There doesn't seem to even be any appetite to take another vote. I mean, it's really extraordinary. And yes, there are reforms to the FISA 702 law that ought to be done, that you could actually work through the normal committee process and have it fixed up the way you want it.
No,
and it's not really that partisan a decision. No. But when the president threw Bill Pulte into this fire and exploded everything.
No, it's not about Pulte. It's not about Pulte. That's window dressing. The big concern here is the erosion of your constitutional freedoms because of a national security state.
And even John Boone has said he does not want the DNI office to be weaponized. And this is all about elections and the hunt for a rationale that the elections were stolen in 2020 and a bulk work to claim that they're being stolen in the midterms. And so I think the red lights are flashing everywhere in the political offices of the Hill. And I think it's this important aspect of it.
That is a fascinating framing of this, Rick. And I know that you see this largely the same way here, Jeannie. If this is allowed to happen, FISA goes dark, presumably the United States is in more danger. What does a DNI Pulte do with the information that he will suddenly have access to? We know what he did with private mortgage information. What would he do with the CIA, for instance, at his whim?
Yeah, and I think we should say that because FISA operates under this year-long certification by the special court, it'll continue existing surveillance until March 2027, when it will go dark. But, whether they can take on new surveillance, I think is a question I don't have a good answer for. But I think what we will see Pulte do is exactly what we saw his predecessor do or try to do, Tulsi Gabbard. The Trump administration is intent on using an idea of foreign interference, of which we don't have.
They're not focused on how FISA can be weaponized against an American citizen that is completely innocent. Spy powers? What about constitutional freedoms? That's what Jeannie and Rick Davis should be talking about. Two dipshits on Bloomberg.
Now, of course, we're going to see Pulte, whose only qualification for this job is his fealty to Trump and his willingness to do whatever Trump wants. And Donald Trump has said that one of his jobs is going to be to find out about how the 2020 election was rigged. It was not. And the question then becomes, does he attempt to then undermine the midterms in 2028? But I think the critical component here, just with the president talking about the SAVE Act in the last few days, he has been intent since he got back into office to using foreign interference as a pretext for getting the federal government involved in supervision of elections at the state and local level. It's as sort of simple and unconstitutional as that, because of course the federal government has no real role in that. But it's a pretext from which we can see Pulte try to do things like cherry pick information from intelligence, and this is something that Mark Warner talked about publicly, and use that as a pretext for doing something like sending ICE in. That is where we are at this point, and that's why I agree with everybody who voted against the continuation of this. We are better off not having a renewal than having Bill Pulte in there at this point.
Boy, do you share that sentiment, Rick? Is that the end game here? Is that why Tulsi Gabbard went to Fulton County to seize the ballots?
Yeah, look, I think all of this has the similar common string, right? I mean, I think when you pull that string, as Jeannie said, you go back to the 2016 elections, and the Russian investigation and the efforts by Tulsi Gabbard to try and basically reframe that as the Obama attack.
This is what I'm saying. FISA was used to be weaponized against political enemies, against certain constituencies within the citizenry. It should be sunsetted. These spy powers should not even happen. This came right after 9/11. This was a 9/11 thing. Sunset the damn thing and stop it. The NSA has too much power. They don't need it. Well, they need to protect you. Wait a minute. Benjamin Franklin said this. If you need the government to protect you by giving up your freedoms, you no longer have freedoms and you are no longer protected. You don't have freedom nor security. The whole idea of the Enlightenment in our constitutional republic, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all our property rights, is realizing that life is risky and you don't need the government to cushion it. Because when they try to cushion economically or militarily or through spy powers, you no longer have constitutional liberties. That's what this is about. It's not about Pulte. This is an overextension of a surveillance state post 9/11.
He seems to be. And you know, a flip side of this is the fact that the president, with this acting appointment, has revealed a huge contempt for nonpartisan intelligence gathering. It's another in a long line of attacks from the president on expertise. Everything in the president's mind should be used as a partisan issue, and nonpartisan intelligence is something that he has no interest in.
Well, we're wading into some deep waters here. Thankfully, we have Rick and Jeannie to guide the way. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzin.
FISA needs to be canceled and has nothing to do with Pulte, has nothing to do with what's going on with the Trump administration. It has everything to do with overreach post 9/11. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. Collagen will help to remodel your joints if you have arthritis or a sports injury. This will help to recruit ACAN and chondroitin to help to cushion the joint, glucosamine and collagen type 2 to remodel the cartilage. It also inhibits pain gatekeeper, NAV 1.7, so it's reducing pain for arthritic issues, and it helps to reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. In addition, it blocks EP4, and EP4, by blocking it, you're reducing inflammation. So this will help to remodel your joint. You should stack it with the collagen. That will help to remodel the joint even further. And you should do this very simple exercise. Wherever the joint pain is, either through sports injury or through arthritis. You want to, let's say it's an elbow. You want to be able to open, so extend or flex, depending on what kind of pain you have. But open up to where you're producing pain with that joint. Go a little bit more and count to 20 seconds. Do that 2 or 3 times. Do that every day. And what you will notice by taking collagen and the collagen and doing this exercise, you are sending micro signals to help remodel the joint. And over time, you're going to be able to open up the joint more without pain. The longer you wait, the longer it will take to remodel. So please go to my store, get the collagen, do these exercises, and also stack it with the collagen. It's a great way to remodel a sports injury or arthritis. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please share the links, ask your social media to follow me. All these videos are for free, so please purchase the products, help support the channel. And if you would like, you can be a paid member to my Patreon channel or Substack channel to help support the free content that I produce. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.